Test. Hey everyone. We'll get started in a minute, but there's 2 fruit baskets that were dropped off. I know you might be hungry. It's a food conference, so there's a basket on the front table and somewhere in the back if you need a snack. We're all foodies here. So we do have this now. This is advanced. Yes. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Definitely take a snack. And we'll see if anyone else trickles in. I think we're running 15 minutes behind schedule, so hopefully you guys can wait. We're in between everyone and lunch. All right, well, thank you all for coming. Welcome to the 3rd Annual Food Action Summit and the 2nd Annual Food Recovery Panel. Really grateful that you all chose to come and thankful to FAACTS for such an inspiring event. We have a lot to learn this week. So, my name is Beth Bodner, and I'm the Commercial Zero Waste Assistant Coordinator at the San Francisco Environment Department. Our department, you just heard from Tyrone Jew, our department has been working for over 30 years to advance climate protection and enhance quality of life for all San Franciscans. I sit on the Zero Waste team where we design strategic programs to address environmental and community health problems. So, our team at SF Environment has set robust targets to reduce refuse generation and cut landfill disposal. And the goals emphasize reuse, repair, building new local industries and microeconomies like the one we'll learn about today. Just a quick session overview. We will have a very brief introduction to SB 1383. We'll get to know our panelists. We'll have a moderated discussion, and then we'll have time for you all to ask questions. All right, so let's get right into it. How does this image make everyone feel? You can shout out some words. Sad. Angry. Yeah. Wasteful. Yeah, so this is a pile of food that was at one point edible and probably delicious. And Senate Bill 1383 is California's organics pollution reduction law, and it was designed to reduce this. It was designed to reduce organic waste and increase food recovery. So what you see on the screen is preventable, and this law aims to improve infrastructure and reduce hunger. So we also heard this morning, and I'm sure most of you in the room are too familiar, that 1 in 5 Californians and 1 in 4 San Franciscans are food insecure. I know policy is not always seen as a positive thing, but this law is really, really meaningful. So here's a timeline, and you don't need to memorize it, but what I do want you to take away is that the SB 1383 started as a bill, and it was signed into law less than 10 years ago. And in just 10 years, food recovery systems have been built across the state, and millions of pounds of food that would otherwise go to waste have been redistributed for human consumption. So a lot can change in 10 years. And then you'll see here in the orange that as of January 2024, all businesses that are food generating that meet the policy's size thresholds are required to donate food. So if you work in food, you're a wholesaler, you work with grocery stores, they're probably required to donate. So let's take a look at what food recovery looks like in practice. I know this is kind of small, but there's a lot to cover. I might just stand up. So on the left, we have the generators. Hopefully you can read. There's a variety of different grocery stores, wholesalers, restaurants, health facilities, hotels, even event venues. Large events are even required to donate food. And when they have surplus edible food, they're required to have a partnership with, in the middle, either a food recovery service or a food recovery organization. So a service is like Extra Food, who transports food around the city, and they transport food usually to a food recovery organization like APA Family Services and D10 Market. And over on the third circle, we have SF Environment, and it's really small, but SF Department of Public Health. So we are partnered together to conduct inspections at businesses throughout the city, and we're providing resources, ensuring education. We want to make sure our businesses know how to donate and that they're doing so. So we're not big and scary. We're there to educate them on this newer law. There's also the teal money signs show grant funding. We have received funding from CalRecycle, which we then, our department gets to distribute to food recovery organizations to help run operations. And then the blue lines moving outward to CalRecycle show that we receive reporting on how many pounds the food recovery organizations are receiving, and then we send that on to CalRecycle. All right, so hopefully this number that you saw earlier feels a little bit more, you can appreciate it. It feels more impactful now that you see how food is moving throughout the city. It requires a lot of people, a lot of drivers, a lot of strength. I've been in the Extra Food car, they're lifting, and it's not easy work. And there's gleaning and sorting, so a lot goes into this. Okay, now for my fun slide. 1 second. Had to draw. So this is more of a conceptual slide. The other day, Will from Extra Food said it very nicely that businesses can now almost consider a fourth bin, and that surplus food that's edible does not belong in the others. The compost is for scraps. I made it red because Whole Foods actually uses red reusable bins for their surplus food. And I really want this to show that food is a valuable resource and the highest and best use is human consumption. And San Francisco's food recovery program is an excellent example of systems and behavior change. And with all the surplus food leaving businesses, there's a lot of demand on food recovery organizations. They are processing and distributing food to the community, and that takes a lot of work. So let's hear from our organizations that are doing the work. And we'll start with Fanny.
Hi everyone, I'm Fanny Lam, Executive Director of APA Family Support Services. I'm also the co-chair of API Health Parity Coalition. Certainly food is part of our big work. APA primarily run 3 family resource centers in San Francisco, and we have mental health, youth program, parent education. But food is really the contacting point where we will meet the parents and share food or celebrate some cultural traditions that attract the family to our center. Apart from food funding from our city partners, we also really lucky that started a partnership with SF Market last year, and that really support our new center in Excelsior. With that new center, we're able to have a small kitchen, and so apart from distributing the food, we're also cooking together with our Laos or Thai or Cambodian elderly that they may not be eligible or may not be feeling comfortable going into a particular or other Chinese or Asian pantries. And so we're really happy to have that as part of our support. So here is a big circumstances of our agency, the 6 big programs that we run, the amount of family we serve, and the language that is spoken in our staff. 85% of families that we serve are very low income to low income. Unfortunately, there is a rising moderate income family that we also needed to serve. Sometimes it's just medical issues. Sometimes it's like they lose their job. But it is a big problems that we face in our communities. We also have, we also work with San Francisco Marine Food Bank, and we realize that when we're able to provide culturally appropriate food to our families, they are much happier, they are much willing to cook, and they're much more willing to share their food with the families and the kids. And one of our focus of APA Family Support Services is children. We want the parents to create a relationship and connection with the children, even though they don't live in their own villages or their own country anymore. One of the very important connection is food and language. And we're really hoping that we can build this relationship through food. And we also understand that it's also part of very important health features of bringing up, so that the kids doesn't eat ultra processed food, doesn't eat cheap food on the streets. And this is part of our main focus in the coming years to go. Thank you.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Maggie Shugerman, and I'm here representing the District 10 Community Market, which is San Francisco's first free grocery store. Thank you. We are located on 3rd Street in Bayview, Hunters Point here in San Francisco. We opened our doors June 4th of 2024, so this summer will be our second anniversary, our second birthday. This was a long process to get to where we are with the doors open and feeding the community. We started working in this project back in 2021. So it took about 3 years of, San Francisco City permitting process and building up our capacity and our referral partners, which I'll speak more to, as well as, ensuring that the community was on board with and supportive of the work that we're doing on 3rd Street. All the photos you're going to see are of the food at the market and of the market. So if you ever want to come visit, just let me know. We do tours, as in I do tours. So the D10 Community Market was built to kind of combat a number of different things and a number of different issues in the charitable food system, those being food access, dignity, choice, and creating kind of like a community space versus a space where folks are just given items and expected to receive them without having an input. So we like to say that kind of our 3 core speaking points are about dignity, choice, and nutritious options. So when you come to the D10 market, you're given a shopping cart, there are aisles, there are signs on every item, and folks are really encouraged to shop our store like a regular grocery store. I just tell clients, instead of looking at the price tag, look at the item limit. That's how we give food out. And so folks are really walking through the store and making their own choices. Oh, I do want the noodles, but I don't want the oatmeal. I do want the bok choy. I don't want the collard greens. Sorry, there's a bug in my face. So folks are really excited when they get the agency to make the choices about what they're feeding themselves and their families. And this also speaks to being able to take foods home that are culturally relevant. So one of our families is going to have a really different shopping cart than the next family behind them. I should also say we also serve individuals with diet-related illness as well. Folks get to shop the market 2 times a month. We have almost 2,000 families and individuals registered on our program at my most recent count, and we are open 3 days a week, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I'm controlling my slides, right? So just to kind of give you a little overview about how this market came to be and how we operate, I'm an employee of Bayview Senior Services, as are the other 4 staff that work at the market. Beyond that, we're all volunteer-based. So we are funded by the San Francisco Human Service Agency, always looking for other sources of funding as well, just put that out there. And the way that we're able to provide this amount of food and this quality of food is really a hustle of purchasing, getting donations, really active participants in food recovery, and also working with organizations like Extra Food, Food Connect to bring those pieces to us. So we work with SF Market, Extra Food, Food Connect, like I said, the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. We also work directly with small bakeries like Arizmendi, Black Jet Bakery, Panorama in the Mission. And we also do some purchasing as well from Washington Produce. We also work with grocery outlets so that we can purchase the items that people specifically ask us for, especially culturally relevant items that you can't find at the food bank or through donated channels. And I could talk forever, but I'm going to pass it along.
Hi there, my name is Cherie Graham. I am COO of Extra Food, and I'm so thrilled to be mentioned so much already on this panel. Thank you to FAACTS for having this event. I feel like I spend a lot of my time outside of work explaining food recovery, and the fact that I went to this session upstairs and every speaker talked about food recovery, I feel like I found my people, which is amazing. So I wanted to just tell one personal story that I thought of during the speakers this morning. I came to food equity work in a very roundabout way. I was working at a college access program. So this was a nonprofit that provided after-school academic social services. And that mission was very personal for me because my sister and I are first-generation college students. That changed how our lives unfolded. And one of the first things I learned working in this program was whenever a student's grades started to decline or their behavior became disruptive, I'll use one student in particular, we learned that he wasn't eating his breakfast or lunch at school because he was saving it for his younger siblings at home. And that, to me, kind of the penny dropped that it all starts with being able to eat nutritious, healthy, yummy food. So Extra Food actually delivered food to this organization I worked for, and we were able to set up a pantry that allowed students to fill up a backpack and bring that food home to their family. So that's how I learned about Extra Food 6 years later. I am now working at Extra Food. I have a colleague here, Macy Jo, in the back, who is our ops coordinator. She is the magic. She's the air traffic controller. She makes sure everything happens. I forgot about my slides. Hold on. This is what happens. I talk and I forget. I don't even need to talk about this slide because everyone talked about it this morning. Food is wasted. Good food is wasted. People are hungry. It's two sides of the same coin, frankly. And then, of course, the environmental impact of that food going into landfill is crazy making. So what do? I think some folks have already talked about it. We recover food from food generators. So that is primarily grocery stores, schools with the mandatory school lunch. They've got a lot of lunches left over. Hospitals, farmers markets. We deliver that food directly to recipient partners like D10. We have no warehousing, we have no storage facilities. It goes directly from the food donor to the recipient. And that's because a lot of this food is at its sell-by date. So we want to get it to people who are going to consume it pretty quickly. I want to give you some stats. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So in 2025, we rescued 5.1 million pounds of food. We operate in Sonoma, San Francisco, and Marin counties. We've been around about 14 years. Some of you may have known San Francisco Food Runners. We took over their operations about 3 years ago so their founder could retire. She had been doing the work for 30 years. She trusted us to take on that mission. So we started that about 3 years ago. We serve about 50,000 people a week, and that's through our recipient partners. I suspect that number is undercounting because we don't always know who our recipient partners are serving. More than 60% of the rescues we do are done by volunteers. We have almost 500 active volunteers. We also have 5 refrigerated vehicles, 5 staff drivers that are also doing rescues. So we're rescuing over 5 million pounds of food a year, and our staff is less than 18 people. So we are very grateful for support of agencies like San Francisco Environment. And if you want to get more involved with Extra Food, of course, we are always looking for funding, like D10, but we have a ton of volunteer opportunities, so I encourage you to get on our website and take a look if that's interesting.
Hi everyone, I'm Kayla Abe and I'm the co-owner of Shuggies. We are a restaurant in the Mission in San Francisco, and we're focused entirely on using upcycled ingredients of various sorts. But you know, any good restaurant in San Francisco is trying to reduce its own waste for cost-saving purposes, but what makes us unique is that we are actually going out and taking other people's waste and incorporating it into our menu and making it the highlight. Our restaurant does not look like an environmental space, aside from being green, but at its core is fully upcycled. We use like dead stock fabrics, a bunch of vintage fixtures, and for us, this restaurant is actually our educational space where we're able to introduce people to this idea of food waste as something meaningful, delicious, and good for the planet. We source all types of different, so my background has been in sustainable agriculture. My partner's is as a chef, and I think both of us really came into food waste through the farmers market, through working with a bunch of local farmers, and produce and that channel was really kind of our driving force. As we've been doing this work, though, we've found so many other kind of missing links in our local food system, and we've incorporated all of that into our menu. So in the beginning, it was a lot of like surplus food, cosmetically irregular. Now we're bringing in things like invasive species. So this is our wild boar on the menu right now. Wild boar being an issue for all of the carbon it uproots from the atmosphere. There's no bag limit in every single county but 2 in California. We also use things like not just invasive species, but things that are surplus from some of our fishmongers and partners. Also invasive species like scorpion fish, things that don't have marketability like arrowtooth flounder that you just never see on a menu. Byproducts are also a huge part of what we incorporate. So we used to have pizza, maybe if any of you are like Shuggies, Shuggies Trash Pie was our long former name, but we still use doughs that are made from our own upcycled whey, as well as upcycled oat flour, the byproduct from making oat milk. It's milled down, we incorporated that into our flour. And I'm like, there's one more category, offcuts. So you're not gonna find like a chicken breast on our menu ever. All the meat that we bring in is usually something in excess that's not a prime cut. So right now we have beef cheeks on the menu. We have like a petite filet, which like seems like just a nice piece of steak, but is really the trim after restaurants buy up like their 4 or 6 ounce filet mignon. It's all of the trim around that. So everyone gets like their perfect medallion when they buy it from a purveyor. Another really key ingredient to what we do is fun and celebration. At the end of the day, we are a restaurant. The only for-profit on this panel, which makes me seem like a greedy capitalist, but I think it's important that we have these solutions to this food waste crisis that people actually buy into as well. And for us, the winning equation has really been merging this sustainability mission and joy and play. I've found that not everyone is going to sacrifice financially in favor of doing something good for the planet. So if you make it absolutely compelling and you lead with a great menu and a fun experience, then people listen. So it's really like leading through people's stomachs. Our meager amount of food saved compared to all of these organizations, but in the time we've been in business, we've rescued 120,000 pounds of food from the waste stream, and that is just as one restaurant. Really, it's just, thank you. Thank you. But really, it's my partner and I. We are very much a small mom and pop shop, and just the two of us are doing the work of going to the farmers market every weekend, talking with farmers, purveyors, seeing what's in excess, and having these open lines of communication every week. We aim to be maybe a very extreme example of what it could look like to, as a business, incorporate food waste into your supply chain, but everyone can do a little bit. I think if all restaurants did a little bit to incorporate this thinking into their models, we would be in a really awesome place. And just on the last note of celebration, I think we've kind of looked at sustainability and food waste and climate from one angle at many times. I won't say food waste. I'll just say like the sustainability, all sustainability initiatives. You know, sometimes it's beige and natural fibers and looks one way, and it's kind of coming from this place of constraint and like, how do we get ourselves out of this hole? But we are, with our restaurant, trying to introduce this idea of food waste and climate as a celebration as well. There's so much amazing stuff that's out there. It creates these amazing creative constraints for our kitchen. We have much more interesting food because of that. We're getting to know our farmers and our purveyors, and there's so much fantastic about this industry as well. So repositioning everything. This is our little sparkly dessert. But yeah, we're open Tuesday through Sunday, so drop in anytime.
See if you guys your faces are on the screen for our panel. Thank you all so much. And Kayla, I think it's really exciting to have a business on the panel. It is newer to me too, but you know, the state law and our local ordinance does not say that food has to be donated to a nonprofit. Obviously, it's best for food to stay local and be eaten by the business first if they donate it to employees, and then go to feed those in need. But it's really cool to have a business changing the game. So excited to hear from all of you. We'll start with our warm-up. We're going one sentence. Tell us about a food item that your organization recently recovered that you found to be particularly exciting. Go any order.
Okay, I was like, well, I'm holding the mic, so I guess I'll go first. Fresh herbs. I guess that's a word or a phrase, but fresh herbs, when you're cooking on a limited budget, when you're just getting access to, a small array of things, the least you can do is add some flavor. So anytime we get herbs, spices, roots that people can use to jazz up their food, and that might be a little more, culturally relevant, how they can take something that they got at the market and turn it into something that looks like what they'd eat at home, is possible when we recover things like fresh herbs.
So I posed this question to our staff yesterday, and one of the programs I didn't mention is in Marin and Sonoma counties, we have a gleaning program. So this is recovering produce from either farms, or if you've been to Marin or Sonoma, a lot of households have fruit trees and gardens, and we will recover that food and deliver it to people that need it. So one of my favorite responses is earlier this year, we gleaned persimmons And I have to say, at least some of those persimmons fell off the back of the truck and ended up in the office. And there were at least half the staff that were in the office that had never had a persimmon, myself included. So that was an exciting item for us.
I think what's interesting about being a restaurant in this space is that we don't always have regular sources of things. Like we sometimes get one-off, actually I'm sure you guys all get one-off things too, but in pretty small quantity sometimes. So things that are not necessarily representative of like the whole food system, but interesting items that I found are ones that get lost in the food system because of non-marketability. So recently we had this kind of like single varietal chili farm reach out to us because they package like dried chili powders made, like they specifically market individual varietals. And they had this whole field that was cross-pollinated, so they didn't know the variety of chilies that they had, so they couldn't sell them. I mean, I guess they could have made something else, but honestly, like I've been on the CPG side also, and it's so hard to like make new labels and like create new specs for everything. So there isn't always that flexibility, but we brought in like 300 pounds of dried chilies, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they're dried. So like it's like, yeah, it's massive. And we just got through them after like a year and a half. But yeah, just mystery field crushed chilies. They were, I feel like they were a mix of like arable and like they're a little bit smoky. I have no idea. Not so hot, but we did use it in our chili. Like we made a chili oil that lasted forever. But yeah, we'll never know.
For us, it's eggplant. It's a very important ingredient in the South and Southeast Asians. We cook it anyway, steam, fry, grill, anything you want with eggplant.
Thank you. All right, so no, it's still fun, but the important conversation. All of you focus on recovering food with dignity, and I'm hoping you can tell the audience what that looks like at each of your organizations. And I'm sure it's different for all of you.
Thank you. So when Extra Food was founded, I think the first value that our founder put forward was community. And originally, and still to this day, food is rescued from local food generators, transported by people usually who live in the community and deliver to other people in the community that need that food. So it's about creating community in a particular area. Of the 5.1 million pounds of food, I want to get my number right, 35% of that last year was fresh produce. Another 18% of that was ready to eat, prepared meals. And I mention those two things because the food we deliver is fresh, nutritious, fruits and vegetables. And often, if you think of a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods, the sandwiches and salads and soups that they're pulling on the sell-by date, we're able to deliver that to seniors who maybe can't cook, unhoused communities that don't have access to a kitchen. So I say all that to say recovered food, I think, looks different than what a lot of people think of as recovered food. And all the work that we do at Extra Food is driven by what our recipient partners need. That's what comes first for us. Obviously, the quality of the food that we're delivering needs to meet a certain level. So what we do at Extra Food is our volunteers are trained pretty extensively for a volunteer program so that when they go into the receiving area of a grocery store, they're taking a look through the box of produce. If there's squished strawberries on the bottom, they're taking that out and it's going into the store as compost. Like, really trying hard to make sure the food we're delivering is food that we would eat, that is high quality. I do want to say one other thing that's been really important, I think, for Extra Food success is there can be a power dynamic between an organization like Extra Food that's providing food free to recipient partners. We work really hard to balance that power dynamic because we need to know from our recipient partners if they're getting deliveries that aren't meeting standards or aren't being used. So we want our recipient partners to call us, and they do call us and say, hey, that store you've been delivering from, the bottom of the box consistently has crushed produce. Can you, and then we educate the store, we educate the volunteer that's delivering it. So for us, dignity means choice, it means fresh, it means being able to partner with us in a very equitable way.
So just to kind of add to what you were saying, I've been in food recovery for like 11 years at this point. I got my start at the University of San Francisco when I was a student, starting the food recovery network over there. And we would glean from places like the SF Produce Market. And, you know, when I first got started with food recovery, the spoilage rate was so much higher than it is today. I think our partners in food recovery have really grown and been able to provide items that are far more usable to us and to our clients. So as the years go on and folks get more involved in food recovery and this becomes a bigger conversation, you know, it has improved to be a much more dignified experience. But it goes beyond what we receive from food donors like Extra Food, and it comes into like how we're displaying the food and how we're giving it out in a market environment. So may I go back to my slides? That's it. Like any of them that show the market. There's a couple. Oop, maybe the next one. Yeah, so I mean, over half of the food you see right here is gleaned from donated product, and it doesn't look that way because it is beautifully presented, it's clearly labeled. We go through it with our volunteers and our staff and ensure that anything we wouldn't eat is not put out on the sales floor for our clients. We do have an area in the store called the community table where we put cosmetically challenged items, things that aren't pretty enough to make it into the beautiful case line. I used to work at a farmer's market and we would call like our ugly berries cosmetically challenged and sell them for cheaper. So anyway, we take that ethos into the market as well. And so folks are encouraged to take the items that aren't as beautiful, that might be a little bit past their prime, but that is put in a different part of the store where folks are making that choice. It's not just presented to you where you're expected to take it. And so I think having those kind of two levels of how you're presenting the food really adds to the experience because folks are making that decision of if they're going to take home the, you know, slightly wrinkly pepper or not. So I think doing it with dignity just takes a little extra work, and that's why we're really grateful for our volunteers and our staff that hold our standards and ensure that the food our clients are taking is the type of food we'd like to see.
For us, the most challenging part is that our standard is different from what the family standard is. Because a lot of the family we serve have young kids and children, and a lot of them actually do not have medical support or medical, or they are afraid to go see doctors. And so when we tell them it's okay to eat, even though it's, you know, past the best by day, they may not want to try it. And so a lot of times we need to figure out what kind of food is acceptable to have a little bit of, you know, scratch on the side that doesn't really matter. For example, berries, if some kind of, you know, stuff on top, they will be like, oh, I don't want it. But if it's apple, oh, I can cut it off. So it's really about like talking to them, communicating, and taking feedback every time we distribute food and understanding where they stand, because their worries are something that we may not experience and we don't understand.
I'll take this from the other side of the supply chain, because when guests come into our restaurant, some of them have no idea what we do. You can, like, honestly, I'm not really sure how, but some people can come in, eat, and leave and have no idea that we do anything in food waste, despite like all the breadcrumb trails I leave, like on the menu and the name and whatever. But for us, like, doing this work with dignity means respecting our farmers and our purveyors. We don't take items for free. I think this is the big misconception about what we do, is people do think that we're dumpster diving, or that we're like getting old moldy food, which I'm sure all of us kind of struggle with in our communications. But it took all of the same labor, water, in commercial cases, like, it will take fertilizer too. All of these inputs that go into the growing of all of this food, they're the same whether the food looks perfect or wrinkly at the end. So we are also trying to compensate them equitably for the work that they're doing. Some people don't. It's funny, like, I think some of the farmers have also been kind of brainwashed by our system to say, oh, this food has no value, so they don't want to take compensation sometimes. But we're like, this is how the system works, though. Like, we're trying to break that cycle and give you something for all of this work that you've put in. So that's kind of a hard rule for us.
Really good segue, Kayla. Our next, we can talk about, you just mentioned it. Food waste to a lot of people sounds gross and smelly and something that you don't really want to deal with. And you have somehow, people don't even realize when they're at Shugie's. But what Ty and others mentioned this morning is that climate change can sound and feel really daunting and scary, and we are all working in some sort of sector that is touching climate change now, but how can we reframe food recovery and build a cool culture around it? We can all answer this question, not just Kayla.
I'll start. I think it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. I think you need to lead through people's stomachs, like showing them the other side of what a future could look like, where we're using all of these ingredients, where we're thinking about our farmers, where we're sourcing upcycled. Like, if you put food in front of them that is delicious and fun and innovative, it's just indisputable that this works, And I think putting it in a position where, like, we're in a unique position where people are paying us for this experience, and they're putting like a dollar value to what it is to look at this imagined future of an upcycled world. So I think leading in other ways, it doesn't have to look one way. I think that's been such a big thing for us, is that it doesn't connect with everybody being like having sustainability look in your mind how it looks, like kind of like maybe bland and maybe all these things. So we are trying to show people another side of that. We also, when we started out, we intentionally were not going to be a vegan restaurant, though I absolutely admire people who are. I was vegan for many, many years, but our goal was to not alienate the general public, because this is an issue that we all need to be working towards, not just like the hyper motivated section of the public who's already thinking about these things. We wanted to include meat as well, so that we can hit a wider swath of people, and I think that's a huge part of it too, is just making sure the movement's inclusive as well.
I think some of this is already happening. I don't know how many of you have the app Too Good To Go, where you can get a bag from Whole Foods. Seems to be the most popular one, that's of the day's baked goods, and you get like $40 worth of baked goods for $6 or whatever. There's Misfits Market. I was just speaking to a colleague at Extra Food who goes to the Marin Sunday Farmers Market first thing in the morning, because the fish vendors. I don't know if you've been to that farmer's market. The fish is beautiful and like $40 a pound usually. But if you get there early enough, they sell the bags of the same fish that's like the offcut from the fillet that everyone wants, and you can get this beautiful fresh salmon for less than half the price, right? And that sells out in like the first half hour at the farmer's market. So I think it's already happening to some degree, at least in the Bay Area. Yeah.
I think for us, food recovery makes, our shopping experience more fun because we get a greater variety and folks get to see things that they wouldn't traditionally see in a free food setting. A couple weeks ago, we recovered Nepales and our clients were so stoked to get those. We would not be able to regularly purchase those. So again, speaking to increased variety, increased cultural relevancy, receiving foods that we don't have the budget to purchase, but we get to surprise people with items that they're really excited about.
I think in San Francisco, I agree that the culture has changed so much that people are so accepting of this concept, and it's actually helping the environment. For family we serve, I feel like they used to feel ashamed, like they don't want to line up in line. They kind of want to come in the hours and no one really there, no one see them. But now it's changing. It's also because the rising cost of inflation. I think people also feel like there's no choice. But at the same time, on top of giving them food, we also provide healthy food cooking classes. We also introduce new recipe that make them fun, make it interesting, make it a cultural event for them to enjoy.
Thank you all. So we've talked a lot about, food is moving about, and it's not just each of your organizations working alone. You likely couldn't do the work you do without partnerships. I'm sure most in the room agree. And I know sometimes matchmaking is involved. I know Extra Food does it, and we do it at SFE. When we find a business is not donating food, we will look at our map or our list of organizations that are open to accepting food, and we'll try and put them together and make a match. Can you all share about your partnerships and how they formed? Any exciting stories?
Please. Matching recovered food to the recipient is so important. And Fanny, you just illustrated that when you talked about how important eggplant is. 2 weeks ago, I visited one of our recipient partners in San Rafael that primarily serves unhoused people. And the hallways were stacked with boxes of eggplant because they can't use eggplant, and it came from, I'm not sure who, it didn't come from Extra Food, but it was another delivery of cases and cases of something that wasn't appropriate. We did pick up that eggplant, by the way, and redistribute it elsewhere. But that matchmaking is so important, and I think at the core of that is what I talked about earlier, which is knowing your recipient partners. We have a technology database at Extra Food where we're meeting with our recipient partners at least, I don't know, how often, Macy Jo? Once a quarter, maybe more frequently. We're talking to them on the phone. Our volunteers who are delivering food have a very easy way online to give us feedback if something's changed. So we're constantly tracking what our recipients need so that we can minimize that. And again, that only happens if we have a partnership and not a dynamic where you feel like you can't tell us something's going wrong, right? So matchmaking is really important. And there's a couple of food recovery platforms out there, technology platforms, and they will tell you they will do the matchmaking. Maybe AI will change this, but I have never been able to find a matchmaker, for example, like Macy Jo, who works on our staff, by knowing the people at the recipient partner and knowing where to direct the food.
For us, a big part of our food recovery and matchmaking is just being really aware of what's going on in our 3rd Street corridor and in the Bayview community and in Southeast San Francisco in general. We are really connected with other folks giving out food in the area. I know Chester from CLC is here. Chester will bring us the extras from their food pantry or their meal program every week. So we're kind of a clearinghouse for other pantries in areas that don't have access to the refrigeration and cool storage that we have. So again, just being really connected with our community partners and knowing, hey, you have this program on Tuesdays. If you have extra, drive it by. Chester rents a U-Haul van to bring it to us, or we'll go pick it up. That has allowed us to do so much more, as well as working with our larger partners as well. And just taking a glance at the local food businesses in the area and seeing if they have a plan for their food waste. So we work with Bayview Pasta, and a lot of the bakeries in Bernal. So just getting hyper local about it and seeing where in your community there is food waste and if you can come together to come up with a localized solution has been a lot of fun.
I'd say the majority of our partners are these hyper local, small, like individual relationships with farmers. We just keep communication lines super open with them. We're able to, there is waste that's predictable throughout a season, which sounds strange and crazy, but you know, sometimes, like I'm thinking specifically of Yeyi Organic Gardens, they will consistently have a surplus of cucumbers and squash throughout the entire summer season because tomatoes are always going to be more in demand and those will always go, but you can't just have tomatoes at a farm stand, so they plant a variety of things, and there's always going to be a surplus of those other things. So there are things like that that you can plan for. And then we're just really open to small batches of things that come through, like the chilies. Like there was a farm a while ago, they were like, we're being uprooted. We have like a whole field of radishes that need to go next week. So we can plan around things like that. But also I think since we've been open and people now know what we do, there have been people kind of coming out of the woodwork being like, oh, I actually have this thing that's waste. And it's kind of, for some people, like help them think about their supply chain and be like, oh, I never thought of this as something usable potentially. So in conversations with future partners, we're always like thinking about where in their supply chain they can recover something, because really like anyone with a premium like I'm speaking specifically about food purveyors, like anyone with a premium product will always have a waste output because they're trying to get their premium product. So like we have a walnut partner that is one of like the top 10 producer, like 10% of producers in the US, but with that comes like all of these discolored walnuts that they can't use. I could go on, but I'll stop there.
We really want to focus our energy to build long-term partnership, but sometimes it's not that ideal. So through this conversation, sometimes we'll talk to the store owners and they'll be like, oh, I can donate something now, maybe one-time donation. And with this type of conversation going on and on, we have already developed over 10 partners that just one time every 6 months or one time every 8 months. Pretty nice that, because apart from the fresh groceries, sometimes our family also wants some rice noodle, dry goods that are also important in their culture. And we're able to do that through just ask the staff to talk to when they shop with, you know, like whatever shop they shop at, just talk to the manager and see if there's any surplus food that they can donate to us.
Thank you all. So at San Francisco Environment Department, we're really focused on behavior change. We've also been trying cooking classes that I called scrappy cooking classes. It didn't really land. But I have taken some notes on what you all have said around behavior change and creating community, making food waste celebratory and fun, growing your partners, keeping open communication lines, and showing people the other side of food waste. So I know the people in this room are all taking notes on that, but what are some tangible things that everyone in the room can do to support food recovery, but also reduce the waste we see.
You can volunteer at Extra Food. I would also encourage all of us, if you shop or frequent a market or a farmer's market, or restaurants tend not to have a lot left over. Y'all run on tight margins, so you don't tend to have a lot of extra food. But other places, just ask them if they have a food recovery partner. We have a phone number they can call. We can get them enrolled in our program pretty quickly. It's easy and free for the food donor. So I would say, be aware of places you frequent that could have extra food that, you may want to hook up with us.
You can come eat at my restaurant. But really, this support, all of your dining dollars directly supports this network of like 50 plus purveyors, local farmers, fishmongers, ranchers that are in this partnership with us. You can also buy, like on an individual level, I feel like all the solutions are kind of boring, like buy less and like know how to store food correctly. But I think that's why it's so hard to get people on board with solutions and like incorporating these things into their daily life, because the solutions aren't like, they're not as tangible. Like it was change a light bulb, that's a super specific like single action, but these are larger behavioral shifts that are like less fun and a little bit amorphous. So instead we're just trying to say, come eat at our restaurant and just know that tonight you made a positive choice for the environment.
I would say take a tip from our elders and a lot of non-Western cultures that are so focused on not wasting food, right? Like this is a really new phenomenon that we have so much food that we can just throw it away because we have too much. And so if you're working in community with folks from other cultures or elder folks like we often do at the market and everywhere here, right? You're learning, people are like, I would never throw that away. You can eat this. And I think it's funny because now on social media, if you're on like the really food obsessed corner of Instagram and stuff that I am, it's like all I see are recipes for how to use your scraps and how to upcycle your leftovers. So the younger generation is kind of taking a tip from the older generation and trying to come up with new ways. Like I follow a series called Scrappy Cooking online and I love it. She's teaching you how to make like tapache out of your pineapple skins and, all these different recipes that would have never crossed my mind using, I was making juice with citrus and ginger and I realized, I can save that pulp and freeze it and put it in my curries. From working farmers markets, something I learned, I used to work for Rodriguez Brothers Ranch that's down in Watsonville. And this is just like kind of a personal tirade, but I will share it with you because I have the mic. We would sell people bunches of beets and carrots, and they'd always ask us to chop the beet tops off and chop the carrot tops off. And then what was even crazier than that was after we cut off the beet greens, they'd buy chard. And again, like I was there to make money for my farmers, so I didn't really say anything because I'd give the greens away for free, but just thinking about like all the other uses that your food has, and it's not just, the beet bulb, it's not just the carrot itself, but you can make an awesome chimichurri out of the carrot tops. You can use the beet greens like you would any other green leafy vegetable. Roberto, the farmer I worked for, said that broccoli stalks are actually his favorite part of broccoli. So stop cutting those off and throwing them away. Just cut like a 1/2 inch of the skin off, and then they're really tender, and you can chop them up and steam them, treat them just like you would regular broccoli. So I think just understanding that there's way more to the food than the ways we were traditionally taught to eat them. I encourage you to explore that and get a little scrappy. And you'll save a lot of money too.
It's funny because my daughter loved the broccoli stalk and my son loved the top, so they're perfect. And I think that like in San Francisco is so diverse in terms of culture. Actually, in a lot of culture, our main diet wasn't eating the nicest part of the food. Like for pork, we eat the side part of the ribs, not the main ribs, right? But we make really good dishes of it. And I think sharing those knowledges and be proud of where we are in the Bay Area, being able to enjoy that and share and be proud is very important. And knowing that, you know, learning how to compost and all that stuff, it becomes so nature, like just so part of us in living in San Francisco. But I moved to Sonoma County a couple of years ago, and every one of us are given a compost bin, but I would say 5 out of 10 family do not compost. So it's a lot to share, it's a lot to educate others, and to continue to be on this movement to change. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a really inspiring quote for the end. We do have time for audience questions. I would love for you to share your name. You look ready. I'll bring you the mic.
Hello, I'm Sam. I'm here with a few different orgs in like land stewardship and beekeeping, but I am asking a question about like the other side of this food recovery, which is like mutual aid and like actual usage of the food. And I think I do mutual aid projects specifically in the Haight in my neighborhood, but across the city. And there is a ton of food in the city, like a ton of food that is donated and a ton of food that gets wasted, unfortunately, that is donated. And so I think I'm curious about how we can balance like these like top-down, like lofty, noble goals of like, we are diverting 15 million pounds of food with like what happens next. Like actually make sure that it is like used, and how then we can also be strategic to make sure that the food is placed in the hands of people that do need it and need access to it, because it's getting donated to neighborhood centers and things, but then they're left with the waste. And then how are we tracking that waste? Is it just like is there a data tracking experience and all of that? Big question.
I have so much to say about that. I almost don't know where to start. I'll start with what we do at Extra Food. We are very interested in how much of the food we deliver to our recipient partners is wasted. And I'm going to say two things about that. One, again, that goes back to kind of the relationship and trust, because I do think there can be fear at a recipient agency that if they call us and say, it's too much food, then they won't continue to get the food they need. So we work really hard to make sure our recipient partners know that they can be honest with us, that we don't want the food to be thrown away, that if it's not a good fit, we'll adjust things to make it a better fit. We do also survey our recipient partners, and we have several questions about this very thing. Like, if they are throwing food away, is it because it's bad? Is it because they can't use it? You know, what sort of thing like that. I'll also say that some of the weight of food that we pick up is from food pantries. So an organization runs a large food pantry. They're getting a huge pallet of food from the food bank. You don't know how many people are going to show up every day. So hopefully you have some food left over, because that means everyone got what they needed. Extra Food will come in and pick up the food that's left over and redistribute it. Oftentimes that will go, some of our recipient partners are kitchens. So community kitchens that are producing meals. That's where a lot of that type of produce can go to, because it may be, if you've ever been to a food pantry, what's left is what people have picked through, and it may be, what did you call it, cosmetically challenged. So that might be a perfect delivery to go to a community kitchen that's going to chop it up and use it as an ingredient, for example. I do agree that that's a problem, and it's one other thing I'll say and then I'll stop. We have a really important partnership with the SF Marin Food Bank. I think historically, food recovery and the food bank have been seen almost as competitors. That has really changed, I would say, in the last 5 to 6 years. I think of the food bank as this like big cargo ship, and they're purchasing food, and they're getting pallets of food, and they're delivering a quantity of food to people that Extra Food could never do. But because they're this big cargo ship, they're not as nimble. They can't change as quickly. They can't, hence the eggplant at a center serving unhoused people without kitchens, right? Like they just can't pivot that quickly. And I think of, a bit flattering, but I think of us as more of a speedboat. Like we can kind of go in and like, oh, too much eggplant here? Great, we'll pick it up and bring it there. And, we often have recipient partners call us to say, we have an event on Saturday. We don't have a food budget for it. What can you do? And we can, usually it's Macy Joe, we can quickly find a donation that fits that thing. So I think key to solving this very real problem that you're highlighting is that collaboration and communication between all of us that are in the ecosystem.
It also sounds like you were asking about, the client, the recipient, and what they are supposed to do. And I think in the work we're doing, the client should always have the option to opt out, to say, I don't want that, thanks, but no thanks. And as the person, donating or trying to offload that food, you need to have a plan for how you're going to compost it or how else you're going to get rid of it, because it shouldn't be on the recipients or the clients to now have to manage food that they're not going to eat. We know that it costs money to throw things away to compost, and it's just another layer of, responsibility we're putting on someone who is in a time of need and asked to receive food. So I think it's just important to remember the client should always have the agency to deny things that don't work for them.
And that doesn't impact what else.
Exactly, and no retaliation about that.
And Sam, I'll add that, just a plug, we have San Francisco Food Recovery Network, and it's the Extra Food, the food bank, but any organization recovering food, Food Connect. So if you know of organizations, I'd love for them to join. We meet every other month on Thursday morning, and anyone in the room is welcome to join. Thank you. Oh, and remember to share your name.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rieta Anderson. I am a longtime resident of San Francisco and a volunteer with Booker T. Washington Community Center. Question for you, Maggie. For D10 store, who's eligible to receive food there? Because I went there because I am low income, I am disabled, and I have a medical condition, and I was turned away. Oh, and just one more question. I just want to know that your restaurant serve vegan food. Thank you.
So it sounds like when you visited the store, we hadn't opened up our eligibility. So we now work with the Department of Public Health Clinics, Southeast Health Center, Potrero Health Center, Silver Avenue, and SF General to receive referrals for people with diet-related illness. But our primary clientele are individuals with children in the home between the ages of 0 and 24 that reside in District 10. So Potrero Hill, Viz Valley, Sunnydale, and Bayview Hunters Point. We get our clients through a referral network. So CBOs, schools, larger nonprofits that serve District 10 families can send us referrals. And then we also have an opportunity for those like you to walk in and self-apply to the program, where we would route them to one of our referral partners to tap in and see if they need connections to other services and then get them enrolled on the program. So our eligibility was very narrow when we first opened, and it was exclusively for families with children between the ages of 0 and 24. It is now increased to include those with diet-related illness, regardless of who's in their household. And we may be able to open that up a little more in the near future, but I'm being tight-lipped about it for now.
Who else? Yes.
Hi. Oh, wow. My name's Tamara. I'm with Alamany Farms, which is a farm in San Francisco. Everything we grow, we give away for free, which is super cool. I'm curious, kind of in a similar vein to what Sam was asking. I feel like I guess broad strokes, I'm curious if there's like an educational element to the work that you're doing. I think, Fanny, you were mentioning how folks who are receiving food that does not look like something they are used to, and who have like medical concerns, are going to avoid those types of things because for them the risk is greater. But I'm thinking even the like phrasing cosmetically challenged is like kind of like makes me a little weird, like makes me feel a little weird because like that is still really good food and like I would eat food that's cosmetically challenged. And so I'm wondering if there's any, and I think a lot of the reason that we produce food waste is because folks are afraid of food that doesn't look like the perfect things that they've been told are the right things to consume. So I'm just wondering if there's an element of like education to any of the organizations that you're a part of that are like showing people or teaching people that food that doesn't look beautiful and perfect is still like really great and tasty, which I know like Misfits does, but I think the fact that there's a separate organization for that is also kind of frustrating in the grand scheme of the problem.
So in our Family Resource Center, we do a lot of education. One of the class that we teach is what does Best Buy mean versus expiry day. One time we distributed some chicken wings, the frozen chicken wings that passed 3 months. And so one family came back and we complained about it. It was like, oh, it's, expires over 3 months, it's not good to eat. And my staff is trained, so my staff explained to him it's perfectly fine, but if you really don't want it, we can, exchange it for you. And for that particular family, they want replacement. But a lot of families, after my staff explained to them, they said, oh, okay, and they ate it and nothing happened. And so I think that continued education is very important, not just on the food program, but also in other education avenue.
I think what we're trying to do at the market by putting, the prettier stuff on the main sales floor and having our separate area for the other items is really to put our best foot forward for our clients. The produce situation in Bayview is dismal, and people are used to going to Foods Go or Super Save and seeing produce that is in really poor shape, probably a little bit moldy, it has blemishes, and are expected to pay money for that. And are going to a traditional pantry where maybe the food hasn't been stored properly and it doesn't look good. And so I think what we're trying to do is make people feel comfortable and know that just because they're receiving something for free, that doesn't mean that we're going to be giving them just like the number 2s or the A, B, the B's and C's that you're getting when you're doing charitable food. We do provide those items again, but it's about just making sure that when people walk in, it's not like, oh, they're expecting me to be happy about all these banged up pears. So for us, it's about dignity and always offering the choice and the option for folks to opt in and get other foods. And yeah, we do tabling and other events, trying to educate people on all the different food that they can eat, even if it doesn't look a certain way. But for us, we wanted to make sure that our clients feel like they're really getting, San Francisco has beautiful produce. You walk through the farmers markets, you walk through Gus's, Molly Stone's. We want to bring that experience to Southeast San Francisco and to people that don't have the opportunity to go to those places.
Yeah, for us, the education is constant. In the dining room, I feel like we do it in kind of a reverse fashion. We give people the descriptions of things on the menu. We say, like, maybe wilty greens. We say, like all of these things that maybe, like to your point, they're like, what does that mean? But then when the food comes to the table, they see something really beautiful and fun, and they have a great experience with it. And then they're convinced of all of these things. I feel like I also have been in this food like recovery world for like 10 years now, and that phrasing cosmetically challenged, I feel like I use that a lot as well. Like it doesn't bring anything up for me just because it's been normalized. But being able to demonstrate like what that actually means in real time and what that tastes like is, I think, our strongest point of education. And also because waste on an industrial level and at the consumer level are about equal, it is really important that we hit both of those things. It's not just about the solutions that we all generate as businesses, as organizations, but it is on the individual level too, what we are putting in the compost in our own homes, us buying too much, us going out to eat and throwing away the leftovers, like that also is a massive contributor. So it does have to be in tandem.
Regarding education, I think the biggest aspect of education that Extra Food does is around the dates on food. There's so much misunderstanding about the different, I mean, I don't even know how many dates, sell by, best by, use by, you know, on and on and on. So, and often those really have nothing to do with the quality of the food that's in that package. So we're educating our recipient partners, our volunteers, our food donors all the time on that aspect. A couple years ago, we actually produced a video, and the main audience for that video was our volunteers, but it talked about spoilage, particularly with produce, like what's the difference between, you know, an apple having a small bruise versus a plastic container of berries that are moldy and dripping on everything else in the box, right? And try, you know, we do try to draw a line between like a small bruise on an apple you might see in a Molly Stone's or a grocery store, but a moldy, dripping, you know, thing of strawberries, you're going to want to take that out and maybe even remove what's underneath it. I do want to echo something that you said, though. I don't know that our most vulnerable communities should be the ones forced to accept like Molly Stone's produce, right? Like it's almost, I'd like to see efforts made for other parts of the social economic to accept, you know, more cosmetically challenging produce. I think it just, you know, from my perspective, walking into a program where people are coming to get food because they need it, like I want to give them the really nice shiny apple, like even if the bruised apple is fine, right? There's a message there, I think, about value and their value and how they're seen.
Just to echo that, I think everybody should be eating food that doesn't look pristine, and I think the responsibility should really more be on those who can afford to make those choices, and hope that other people will follow suit. But I don't want to put that responsibility on those who are coming to us in need of food.
I'll add one quick thing that I mentioned the scrappy cooking classes. You're touching on exactly what we're trying to do is sometimes people might receive too much of something, even in like from a food recovery organization. So the goal was to bring a full service free cooking class to the organizations who are interested, and we taught pickling the first time around because you can do it to a lot of different produce items and you don't need much and you don't need a stove or anything. So if you have ideas for how else to use all the parts of food or get people comfortable with food, I would love to hear. And I did see a hand over there.
Hi, my name is Ben. I'm from out of state, but I just thought this was a really cool conference to come to. I guess, so all of you guys described elements of centralization and decentralization in various parts of your operations, whether it be from sourcing, distribution, or receiving funds, aka donations. So is there some kind of a challenge like balancing that, whether it be delivery through trucks or storage in refrigeration units? Is there some kind of like a Tang dance balancing act situation that goes on there? And then perhaps also, just because I am out of state, do you guys perhaps have any kind of like advice, tips, or just like common denominators that you have noticed in the success of San Francisco that could perhaps be replicated elsewhere?
Where are you from?
North Carolina.
Our challenges is non-funded driver and truck. So basically, we're a small agency. We don't have funding for truck or to hire a driver. So we have like one of our case manager and his family has a SUV, and so we just have him to use that to pick up food. We have another staff that have a truck, but he lives in the East Bay, so the morning traffic won't get him there by the time. And so like we're just trying to have staff help out. That's how we started doing the food recovery program. And of course, we continue to apply for funding. We're constantly thinking about, can we partner with other organizations that they can drop it off for us, such as Extra Food, or can we get funding to buy a truck? But then you own a vehicle in San Francisco is very costly too. And so we're constantly thinking about how to improve the program.
It takes a ton of physical labor to receive, glean, and store the donated product, and so that's something we're always thinking about, the tax on our staff and our volunteers' bodies. We do safe lift training and everything we can to ensure that the moving the food isn't gonna like hurt anybody, but it definitely needs to be mentioned how much of a physical element that brings. We all joke at the market that we got our bodies by the D10 market because we're always like lifting, and people have these guns now they didn't have before. So yeah, it's a lot of exercise, and I just think that really needs to be mentioned. It takes a large toll on the body.
There are so many like physical constraints to the work that we do, especially because waste is sometimes very unpredictable, and one day you might have pallets of something arrive at your door or offered up to you. Our space has a walk-in of it's like 5 feet by 3 feet. It's so small. So we are just trying to constantly juggle all of the different ways to take in all of this inventory. A lot of it ends up coming down to just creativity, being able to repurpose things. Like if it's good, fresh, we'll do it that way first. And then maybe we can pickle things right before they're about to go. And then if we still have surplus, like maybe we blitz it down and it becomes a sauce. So it's just having these multiple lifespans of all the items that we have. And then on the other side, there's also we're always kind of figuring out the market tolerance for what we can actually put on the menu and people will buy. Because sometimes there is a line, and we had our fishmonger partners not long ago ask, they're like, we have all this bycatch. So sometimes they're bringing in other species that they're not intending to. So they're like, well, this partner brought in shark. Do you guys want that? And we're like, I don't even want to go there. As far as trying to message that, because we're just already so far. It's that's not a conversation that I'm willing to undertake. So it's always kind of it's not only figuring out our own tolerance, but then the market threshold as well.
Am I the only one that ever watched Chopped on the Food Network? That sounds a little bit like your daily life, yeah. I feel very seen by your question because Extra Food was built on a model of point-to-point distribution, picking up food and within 30 minutes delivering it to a recipient. You don't know what you're gonna pick up that day. I mean, generally we've got a lot of ideas because we keep track of all the data and it can be a little bit predictable, but there's always the wild card of food recovery. And that point-to-point system where we don't have a hub in the middle where we can sort, and it is very challenging for us. Some of the ways that we work with that, if we have a food donor that has a very variable donation, we will send one of our refrigerated trucks because it can sit in the truck for maybe 3 recipient deliveries, and a piece of that can go to 3 different recipient partners. If a volunteer is doing a rescue, that's not an option typically. We do have all of our volunteers are superstars, and some of them know our recipient partners so well that when they do pick up at a grocery store, they'll take one look at it and go, I know the recipient I delivered to can't use that. And they'll call us and say, they're not going to take 20 cases of eggplant, who else do you have? And then we're able to find another recipient. We can deliver it to you, Fanny. So it's very challenging. It takes flexibility. Up until now, it takes people. We have, one of the things that we're really proud of at Extra Food is we have spent a lot of time automating our systems around volunteers, around so many aspects of food recovery, but to this day, there's still the person element that keeps us flexible, where we know our recipient partners, where you can call us, where we can be very nimble.
Ben, also there is Refed is kind of this giant. They collect food waste data for the whole country, and the conference is actually in Charlotte, North Carolina this May, so worth checking out. I think you had a question.
Hi, my name is Omar Flores. I'm a Mission District resident, and I was just kind of curious from a data, but also kind of in a holistic perspective. Are there things that y'all have seen food recovery do to change or impact the communities that you're serving? I think one thing that comes to mind is successful matchmaking leads to people not having to leave their communities, right? The right food goes to the right communities that allows them to stay there. I think on the other hand as well, which was brought up, I think, at this table and through other people, for example, if education pieces might not have a translation service, I'm thinking about all the ladies and men and children who might be monolingual, non-English speakers, who might not know what's going on in these efforts. And so, that kind of worries me, and that, and also just like the timing involved. Maybe a family has, 2 working parents, like that are working full time, that might not have time to do these efforts to brine food and all of this. And so what are some things that y'all have seen maybe consequentially change the communities done by food recovery efforts?
I can start first. We totally understand monolingual families. That's why we have staff that speak 9 different languages. Actually, right now it's 11th. We will try to have people that speak their language to talk to them, and sometimes that's not possible. We do use Google Translate, but with the people who are already bicultural, it's actually really easy to share that technology and to communicate with respect and dignity. With the education pieces, we have usually weekday pickup, and you're right, families have to work, and so we're able to store them in our commercial refrigerator, and we arrange them to come pick up at work or after work. That means our case manager has to work later. We also recently expand our program to Saturday and Sunday so that family can come if they wanted to do cooking classes. But that also is a drain of our resources, because that means that on the weekday they have to work less, and then to compensate for that. It's a constantly balance, like what Kayla was saying. It's like, constantly looking at what we can do and how we can feed what the community needs.
So like Fanny was saying, for us, language capability is really important. We don't want to provide information to just one part of our community and not include everyone else. So we have 5 people on staff, and out of us, we have 2 Spanish speakers and a Cantonese speaker, and then we have a regular volunteer that speaks Samoan, English, or Chinese, Spanish, Cantonese, Chinese, Spanish, and Samoan are the main languages that are spoken in our community, so we have some representation for that. And then one person can't be translating for everybody all the time, so we do rely heavily on printed materials as well, and ensuring that every, recipe card and those kinds of things that we're giving out, tips on how to store things, are also going to be translated in the main languages that our clients speak. And then in terms of flexibility, we're trying to be accessible to our working individuals and families, as well as those who have the time in the day to come pick up. So our hours are from 1 to 6 p.m. That means our staff's working later, getting off around 7, but that also means that people can come in after work and get their food. And if it's 6:15 and there's a shopper, they're going to go into the store and they're going to get served, which is really important to us. I had another bit, but I can't remember it, so I'll pass it along. See if it comes back.
I think this is a great question in a restaurant space. I mean, we're an open space for anyone to come in. People on our staff speak Spanish as well, so we're able to communicate with the folks. We're in the mission as well. And I think one of the biggest things, though, is just building trust with the community. And I feel like a huge part of that has just been like being a good neighbor, like accepting all of our neighbors' packages like as a landing point if stuff comes in and they're not home, being able to like check in on their spaces if we see something happening. We give food out to anyone who's unhoused walking through the streets. So it's those things that have kind of helped us build trust with our neighbors in the area, and then that gives us kind of some space to explain what we do. We also have tried to like make price points really accessible too. Lately, as of the last 2 weeks, we created a new happy hour from 5 to 6 o'clock. If you just buy one drink, we'll give free food out. So just different things to engage people in this dialogue.
I just want to mention two things. Extra Food doesn't deliver food directly to individuals that need it. We work with community partners, like our panelists. However, we are very interested and have a very strong track record of supporting our community partners to either develop a new food program or expand a food program. So an example I'll give of that: 2 years ago, we applied for and received a very large grant from CDFA that enabled us to buy refrigeration and freezer units for our recipient partners. So that was a pass-through for us. But we delivered over 40 new either large double-door glass front refrigerators or deep freezer units, which enabled 40 of our recipient partners to store more food, serve more people, that sort of thing. And then the other thing I'll mention is there's a community fridge program that's there are several already that exist that we deliver food to. And if you're not aware of these are refrigerators that exist in various community spaces that anyone can access and take the food that they need. And we're often delivering food directly to those refrigerators, which gives more access to, because I'm obsessed with food recovery, I was at an event last week at a community college, and of course I got the caterer enrolled in Extra Food's food donor program, and then as I was leaving, I saw they had a small food pantry for students on the first floor, and I went in, and it was like ramen and Cheez-Its, which I love a good ramen, but also talk to them about getting deliveries from Extra Food, which could be some fruit and some vegetables or, even prepared meals type of thing. So we're always on the lookout for expanding access in maybe less common ways.
Thank you. So yeah, spread the word about food recovery. You all made it to lunch. Let's have a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for your really engaging questions and for sitting. Really appreciate it, and we'll hopefully have a chance to talk to you all. Thanks.
Alrighty, hello folks. I hope everyone enjoyed the lunchtime, if you were able to get some. Thank you. As we come back to this panel, after a little bit of time outside, hopefully some conversations, if you want to take a couple of deep breaths, just re-grounding yourself. Thank you all for joining this panel. So this is From Crisis to Care, bridging local, statewide, and regional efforts in regional food systems. I'm very excited to have you all here. If this is not the panel that you are here for, I hope you stay anyway, because I'm super excited. We have some great panelists here today. As a quick introduction for myself, I'm Acacia Lynch. I use she, her pronouns, and I work at Fresh Approach as the Farms Together program coordinator. In this role, I connect values-aligned small food hubs that work locally and regionally, as well as farms with market opportunities.
Beyond this, I've also worked at farms as a farmhand, as well as a policy intern at CDFA. And prior to that, I also developed a course on understanding and imagining sustainable food systems. And it is this lens of looking ahead to the future and of spending some time imagining what we can from after we learn from the past that I want to bring in. For those of you who were able to go to the keynote this morning, this is what Raj Patel was calling the radical imagination of the past. And so with that, I'd like to do a little bit of introduction and framing for this panel itself before I introduce our amazing panelists. We all know that food systems right now are in crisis. This is why we are here today. Funding cuts, particularly for food assistance and for programs designed to care for folks, as with HR 1 federally and SNAP cuts, are having detrimental impacts to the people that we know and care about. Cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, along with rising food, gas, and energy prices, are creating a convergence of crises. In SF and beyond, corporate interests are driving the economy, with cost of living rising, feeding into bloated companies, the profit margins of companies profiting off of poverty. It's hard not to be overwhelmed by this magnitude of attacks from those who have the most on those who have the least. But what gives me hope in all of this is that this is nothing new. And that might sound strange, but I'll explain. Farms have been pushed to get big or get out since the 1970s and earlier, with corporate consolidation taking a larger and larger chunk of already small profits. Over 82% of farms these days rely on off-farm income in order to stay profitable. And almost half of farms in the US have negative farm income. That means farmers are paying to get food onto our tables. Food banks have been serving as a primary safety net for far too long, with 1 in 7 people in America relying on SNAP and relying on food insecurity. And for 1 in 5 Californians, this is their everyday reality. The fact that SNAP is a lifeline for so many is an indication of a much larger problem. But since these problems aren't new, that means the solutions also aren't new. Looking around, we have many of the solutions already here today in this room. So this panel will explore some of those solutions. Food assistance grounded in community, long-term support for small-scale farmers, as well as policy work that supports both of these right here, right now, while also systemically shifting economic power back to local areas and building an economy of care. So welcome to all of our panelists. I'm super excited to have you all here today. Joining us here, we're excited to have Maggie Shugerman, the director of D10 Community Market, SF's first free grocery store based in the Hunter Point, Bayview area. And for those of you who are in the panel this morning, you may also recognize Maggie from that. With 10 years of experience in food recovery and food justice, Maggie leads innovative, dignity-centered approaches to food access that challenge traditional emergency food models and advance a more equitable local food system. A graduate of the University of San Francisco, she found her interest at the intersection between environmental justice and food justice, co-founding the Food Recovery Network at USF. Before her position at Bayview Senior Services, Maggie worked for Meals on Wheels in their volunteer program and helped facilitate their home-delivered groceries program. Maggie has worked for multiple different local farms, informing her unique perspective on the local food system. Maggie and the D10 Market have been featured in local and national publications such as PBS, KQED, The Guardian, the San Francisco Chronicle, and more. Thank you so much for joining us, Maggie. Give a round of applause. We're also excited to have Cecilia Laura Chavez, founder and owner of Yeyi Organics, an incredible local food hub based in the Bay Area with the goal of providing fair and sustainable markets for BIPOC farmers. Born in Guanajuato, Mexico, Cecilia is the daughter of farm workers and grew up in Soledad, California. Cecilia founded Yeyi Organics in April 2020 amidst the challenges of the COVID pandemic, in response to barriers small-scale farmers were facing during the crisis. Yeyi Organics serves as a partnership between several BIPOC small-scale organic farmers from the Salinas Valley, Hollister, and Gilroy, offering them a platform to receive fair compensation and better market access.
The vision for Yeyi Organics continues to be grounded in collaboration and sustainability, empowering both farmers and consumers with access to fair, fresh, locally grown food produced with care for their environment and fair labor practices. Thank you so much for joining us. And finally, we also have my colleague, Andy Olive, who works as the Food Access Program Director at Fresh Approach. Andy has been working to build resilient food systems since 2014. In that time, he's been particularly focused on increasing the linkages between small-scale, mission-driven farms to communities who have been historically denied access to healthy food landscapes. Andy has developed unique program interventions across the country, working with corner store owners in the Bronx, food pantries in Brooklyn, gas stations in the Navajo Nation, farmers markets in Mexico, and cooperatives in rural Maine. In the Bay Area, he leads a diverse portfolio of projects at Fresh Approach, including 2 farmers markets, traditional farmers markets in low LFPA program. So, diving into a little bit this background, Maggie.
Joffrey Morris, who is a community worker and lawyer, Bayview local. Joffrey was working with Supervisor Safai in District 11 at the time. This was back during COVID, and as her name has been mentioned many times today already, but Joffrey and Paula Jones were speaking about the concept of a free grocery store and really worked together to push that forward so that we could have the first free grocery store in San Francisco. Instead of the market opening in District 11, the legislation was co-signed by District 10 Supervisor Shimon Walton and sorry, I'm talking too fast. And Bayview Hunters Point was selected as the site for San Francisco's first free grocery store. We are operated by Bayview Senior Services, which has a 55-year history in serving the community. And we opened our storefront on 3rd Street on June 4th of 2024. I was brought onto the project in early 2022, as it took many years to get the idea from legislation to action and having our doors open on 3rd Street.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who were in the earlier panel, you got to see some of the photos of the incredible produce and the incredible program that they have running. Cecilia, you started Yeyi during COVID with this goal of supporting these small-scale farmers who were shut out of market opportunities and were at risk of losing their livelihoods. Could you share the story of how you connected with these farmers and decided to start Yeyi Organics?
Yeah, so I come from about 4 generations of my family being in farming. And although that was, farming is not wasn't a thing for me, even though I did come from that family. I was more into medicine. My passion was math and science. I was never really into farming. And during COVID, I had actually just recently been hired at UCSF and got furloughed because of the pandemic. And I got the opportunity to volunteer with Slow Food from East Bay and to deliver produce from small-scale farmers to San Francisco. And I thought this was just like, just a temporary thing. I'll just do it since everything's shut down. I didn't really think of anything of it at the moment. And then as I started doing the deliveries, I started connecting with the farmers that I was working with. I started hearing their stories about all the challenges that they were facing, how COVID like shut down everything, that all the sell channels that they had. So most of their food was like going to waste. They also faced other challenges like people not paying them on time or taking advantage of them. A lot of them are undocumented, so being scared of like standing up for themselves. So that resonated a lot with me because of my family, like my parents going through a lot when they used to work in farms, and they used to farm in Mexico too. So they did have a lot of those challenges to themselves when they were owners of their own farm. You know, like the seeds, them paying for seeds, like their prices went up. That was one of the reasons why we migrated here. I know Monsanto had a lot to do with it. So I didn't think about all that until I actually volunteered. And then I worked with other leaders, and they told me, like, why don't you just continue doing this? And I didn't want to leave my job at UCSF. Like, at that moment, I thought maybe I will come back to UCSF. So I didn't want to do that, like, permanently. Also, I have to pay bills. So I had to think of a lot of things. So I said, okay, why don't I do this on the side and like see where it goes. So for a long time, I just continued to do this on the side. And then since last year, I quit my job at UCSF because I went back. And then now I'm doing this full time. So this is how it started and how it's going.
That definitely deserves a round of applause. Being able to work in food full-time and supporting farmers is a huge win. So both Yeyi and D10 are examples of this highly locally grounded work. Effective statewide and national policies, I believe, must empower these local organizations rather than prescribing solutions. So an example of effective policymaking that does just that on a statewide and national level is LFPA, or the Local Food Purchasing Assistance Program, known in California as Farms Together. The way that Farms Together works is that food hubs, which are usually small-scale, values-aligned distributors who work regionally, are paired with a food bank or community food partner like D10, and then rather than just checking the local food box and moving on, folks from food hubs directly communicate with these food banks and explore what the community needs that farmer or food hub can provide. For the food banks, it's a totally free, high-quality fruits and vegetables. And for food hubs, it's the life-changing value of a consistent market over the course of months and years. Food hubs could work with their farmers to forward plan while providing fair market prices for this produce. D10 works with Fruit Queen, a fantastic produce distributor based out of Oakland, specializing in California-grown fruits, especially tropical varieties. They've got cherimoya and kumquats, pomelos, some really, really amazing varieties of things. Yeyi works with People's Program in Oakland, that is a Black-led organization providing free, fresh groceries to families in West Oakland, serving over 350 families every other week. Yeyi also works with the Alameda County Food Bank to provide their incredible produce to families in need. So this next question is for Andy. Could you share a little bit more about the history of Farms Together and how it evolved into this program that empowers this local action?
Yeah, absolutely. So, good afternoon, everyone. My role in this panel is really context setting. You all are going to hear from Maggie and Cecilia to really hear the human impact of the story. But I know there's a lot of practitioners in the room who might want to know where this program sits in structurally in our government and how to fund these things and how do you take a federal $1 billion project and get it here into San Francisco and get it into the hands of farms and families. Acacia said earlier, there's history here, so I'm gonna start with that, which our story in this program began in 2020, as I'm sure a lot of you all had your work changed then. In March of that year, during shutdown, we had two immediate problems to solve, as all of you did as well, or many of you did as well, which was how do you feed families right now as stay-at-home orders were in effect, as unemployment skyrocketed, as demand on food banks went up. How do you feed families with really high-quality nutritious foods? And then two, how do you support the farmers, the great farmers using the best growing practices, the small farms, as their business dried up. And we did not create any new idea. We just bought food and delivered it. But we did it by prioritizing small farms first, and we did it by paying market rate prices, farmer set prices. historically, hunger relief models are not paying farmer set prices, and so small values-based producers cannot participate. We said it is worth the funding to do that, and so we worked with a local farm to start in that year, Pie Ranch, who purchased from a network of 10 farms. They aggregated it into produce boxes and delivered it to small non-food bank distributors. I said we had 2 questions, but we actually also had a third, which is, with whatever we're doing now, how can we leave the pandemic stronger than we started? And to answer that, we saw an opportunity in April of that year when the USDA announced the Farmers to Families Food Box Program, which was going to pay ostensibly for programs exactly like ours. What we could have done then was scale up at Pie Ranch. We were doing 100 boxes a week. We could have just asked for money to grow that with 1 food hub and 10 farms. Instead, we knew what Pie Ranch was able to do, many others could do. And so we applied for funding to scale it out. And so in a few weeks, we went from 10 farms, or 1 hub and 10 farms, to 8 hubs and 80 farms. And we're doing 3,000 boxes a week within a month. And through that program, I saw that local farms could work at the scale of food banks through coordination. When that program ended, there was a period where there was not funding for this program except through smaller funders. I know the cities here who helped support the program in San Francisco in those ensuing years, but we, along with national advocates, really showed the story to the USDA that this was super impactful, that farms benefited, that families got the best food. And so we worked with other organizations to make the case that the USDA should bring this back. And they did in 2023 under the new name LFPA, Local Food Purchasing Assistance Program, which around the country was $1 billion, of which California got the largest pot of $80 million. So at that point, we were brought back into the room in collaboration with the California Association of Food Banks and CAF, the Community Alliance of Family Farms, to run that same model we did in 2020, a hub and spoke, to redistribute funding. So we drew down federal dollars that then went to the state, went to then our 3 organizing agencies, and now we administer a program statewide that is running 45 hub networks and has supported 900 farms. And since 2024 has invested more than $60 million into small mission-driven farms, the types of farms you see at farmers markets. To my understanding, there's no other scale of program except Market Match at farmers markets that has procured as much values-based food as this program. Last summer, it was $600,000 a week statewide in every county. It's been unbelievably impactful, and it's realized through collaboration and trust in local partners that if you redistribute funding efficiently, you spread it out through nodes and networks, then when it reaches the ground, there will be the most independence and creativity in its implementation in reaching families and supporting farmers. So we'll talk a little bit more about where things are now and where they're going to be. But when you're looking at a bird's eye lens, that's how the funding works. And then it moves through us to these individual groups who will share more about what it looks like on the ground.
As Andy was saying, the value add in this program is hyper-local, with small farms benefiting while folks in need receive high-quality fresh produce. In our current economic system, this program just doesn't work without support. Farmers can't sell that low, and food banks have invisible margins that they're working with. And so this is what I mean when I say the care economy. Local food systems aren't the most efficient, low-cost system. Yet we're all here because we see value beyond just the economic, in the relationships that we have, the interactions that we have, beyond just transactions. So LFPA takes this point of crisis, small farms closing down, and more folks than ever in need of food assistance, and answers it from a care-based perspective. Paying farmers a fair price is an act of care. Allowing folks the dignity of choice and of local fruits and veggies is care. This is a program that answers everyday needs while building towards a care-based economy that values more than just a bottom line. So now to turn back to looking at what this looks like in action. Cecilia, what has having a fair price and guaranteed market impacted the farmers you work with? What value has it brought beyond just the economic, but also in the personal?
Well, economically wise, I mean, it has impact profoundly, yeah. Like having a secure price, the price that is right for their product, and then having that buyer is just, you know, it's something that they probably have never experienced. So programs like LFPA did that for our farms. This like helped them to get a fair price for their product. So that means that, you know, their business, usually they don't even make a profit. You know, a lot of them, you know, get like really bad pricing for their products. So LFPA brought that price to them, and now, you know, they at least get to reinvest in their business. That was one aspect of their economic thing. And then also like the price reflects the value of their product. And then LFPA also brought us relationships. You know, they feel like, okay, now we can trust that we're gonna get the price that we're looking for in this, in our product. And it also brought relationships with us and the group that we have of farmers. So now they're giving us a little more trust. Yeah.
That's really powerful to hear. And Maggie, how has this program helped you all expand your work and return dignity and value to folks? What stood out to you about this program versus maybe others that you've seen or been a part of?
I mean, I could go on for a very long time. I know we're only here until, 3 o'clock, so I'll try to be concise. I think something that is difficult for folks in the position like we are at the D10 market is that we have such a limited budget, and like many other people are feeling the effects of a decreased budget as we get increased budget cuts while there is a growing need for our services. How do we feed folks in our community and also keep our values about food? And how do we center our farmers and our growers and our fishers and give folks the appropriate price for the value that they're bringing to our community? So we would not be able to afford the type of food that we get through LFPA at the D10 market. The math does not work, right? And so getting access to this kind of food is a really, I think, empowering experience for our clients. As I said in the previous panel, if you're familiar with the 3rd Street corridor and down in Bayview, Hunters Point, there is no full service grocery store. We have Grocery Outlet, love them. We have Super Save, we have Foods Co. So there are stores that are trying their best, but the produce selection there is pretty dismal. It's definitely not the fresh stuff that you see at the farmer's market or that you see at the Gus's or Molly Stone's, like I said before, in other neighborhoods. And we know that our clients deserve access to that same quality of produce as anybody else does in the city. And so being able to present to folks the type of things that you would not be able to get. I mean, there isn't a farmer's market in Bayview, there's Alamany, but there's just not that kind of access. Even if you had the money to purchase farm direct produce, you would still have to leave your neighborhood to get it in Southeast San Francisco. So being able to bring this quality of product directly to our customer has been a complete game changer. Some other things that have been fantastic about the program, which maybe you wouldn't think of, is the freshness. So the produce that we receive from our farms and from our partners at Fruit Queen lasts so much longer than the produce that we're getting from produce distributors. Obviously, food recovery, that food needs to move quickly. And if you're purchasing from a wholesaler, that's been sitting on pallets in the warehouse for who knows how long. So when it comes to freshness, the stuff that we're getting lasts the longest, it looks the best, and folks are able to take that home and really meal plan with their food because it's not just going to go bad in the next couple of days. We're also really lucky to get all organic produce from this program, which is something that, you know, we prioritize with our budget but cannot always afford. And customers get so excited when they get, you know, free range on this organic farm direct produce. Our clients know about buying locally and eating healthily. These are not foreign concepts to our clients. They just do not have the access to things like this. So being able to bring that experience to Bayview has been really exciting for our clients. They don't have to leave, again, the district to get it. They know that they're helping the local economy. They want to help our local farmers. They don't want forever chemicals in their food. They want to be able to bring organic home to their families, and this makes it possible. And you spoke a little bit about the immense variety of items that we get. Fruit Queen has a fantastic network of different farms that provide all different kinds of produce for our multicultural client base. We get collard greens, we get pea shoots, we get chirimoya and ice cream beans, we get all kinds of produce that our clients are not used to seeing in a farmer's market, or like a free food program. And most importantly, it makes them feel seen because they're given food that brings them close to home and reminds them of their culture. So it's, you know, we talk a lot about culturally relevant food. And again, when you have these razor thin margins, it can be really hard to provide something for everybody. So having access to this program has allowed us to meet our clients' need. We try to be, you know, ridiculously client-centered with the food that we're giving out and the way that we run our program. We do surveying and have a bunch of different ways for our clients to give us feedback on the food that they want. And our partners at Fruit Queen are really receptive to that. So we will tell them what our clients have asked for, and then they will provide it for us organic and farm direct. Can't really do better than that.
That's incredible to hear. And yeah, everyone should deserve food that brings them home, that reminds them of growing up as a kid and the food that they would eat, regardless of whether they're actually able to afford it or not.
Yeah, I have a client who's Peruvian, and she saw the ice cream beans at the market and was so excited. And she's like, I haven't had these since I was back home. And if, you know, that's like the smallest thing you can do is to make somebody feel seen like that. So that was a real victory.
But I do want to recognize that as much as this is an incredibly important program, it is a federal program, and as such has been affected by the federal administration. And Andy, could you share a little bit more about what the national cuts have meant for this program and what advocacy has looked like for this program? What has been effective?
Yeah, so again, I want to add some color or context. You know, earlier I shared some big numbers, 500,000 a week, 800 farms, $60 million. That can be a little bit abstract, but I really want to share how this program is an engine in the economy. You know, every dollar into this program is actually $2 into the economy. So before I share a little bit about where things stand or the implications federally, I think it's important for everyone here to know how it works at a systems level, because I know a lot of folks here are systems thinkers, and want to see how you can circulate dollars into food assistance in meaningful ways. And Cecilia here is just a great example in that. In, you know, how do you turn $1 into $2? Well, through these programs, Cecilia originally got set up with food banks and partners in the city, Booker T. And in her time running these programs, having months-long, year-long contracts, she got experience and got new connections and expanded her work from that first. It's a runway for expansion. Since then, she's continued work with Booker T. The city might be happy to know that investment has carried on. She's moved into food as medicine work as well. I know there's food as medicine panels happening here. She's moved into school districts as well. All of that was aided by having the runway of investment from an LFPA program. So when last year the USDA canceled this program, they canceled investment into our local food economy. They canceled growth. And specifically, they canceled to California a promised $45 million to continue this program into 2028. And nationwide, it was $500 million and $1 billion when you include the cuts to farm to school. So we will probably have another question later about where things stand. But when we're talking about what's at stake here, the stake is not just the food loss for the families. It's not just immediate dollars to farms. It's to economic growth. This is not a handout to farms. It's economic stimulus. When you think about how food dollars can work in emergency food, we really want people to think about what it means to buy from local farms, how it supports our local economies, how that dollar is staying with families. You're bringing on new workers. And without this program, I know farms are going to go under. Right now already, 4 family farms are closing every day. And without this program, that will accelerate to some degree. So there's a lot of hope here in this program, but there's also a lot at stake.
And could you share a little bit about what has been effective in the advocacy so far? So last year, this program was cut and frozen actually right during this conference last year. And through the advocacy work that Fresh Approach alongside others did, it was able to get reinstated. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes, so that's actually a great glimmer of hope. You know, this program in California, it's in every state and dozens of tribes. In red states and blue states, red counties and blue counties. So last February, they froze the program. And at that point, we were doing $500,000 a week. And we had $6 million of outstanding money that we'd already spent that the government was saying, we're not going to pay you. And that was nationwide. That's bankrupting amount of money for small farms. Through our advocacy in California and our allies nationally, we unfroze that funding within 1 week. I don't know if in this madhouse year people remember how crazy the early part of the administration was, but I don't know of any other story or any other program that was able to get a win in such a short amount of time. And it was because of how impactful the program is and how calls came from every corner of the country, how pressure was applied to the USDA, and how they conceded really quickly. That being said, when they conceded, they said, okay, we'll pay you your current contracts. We're canceling everything to 2028. So it speaks to opportunity. It speaks to advocacy. It speaks to raising our voices. But there's a lot of work to do, and we need to raise our voices more, and we'll talk more about where things are in that realm soon.
Yeah, and just to highlight that, it's really the relationships that were already in place with these food hubs, with the food hubs to their farms, that meant that that chain of advocacy could happen very, very fast, have a quick turnaround. Bridging local and national efforts, though, often looks like telling the stories that we see on the ground to fight for these changes. The work that Yeyi and D10 are doing goes alongside and beyond LFPA. So I just want to turn it to you all. What does this advocacy and relationship building already look like? Maggie, for you, in a field where it's so difficult to get funding, what does support look like beyond just the food, whether that's in community building or social capital?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of a number of ways we could take this conversation. One is just, you know, how can you contribute beyond financially to a program like ours or to, you know, collective work like this. Obviously, it's easy to say, come volunteer, which we'd love to have folks volunteer. We definitely need that kind of help, but there's also more discreet things folks can do to help out. They can be ambassadors for our program and through word of mouth kind of spread the work that we're doing. We like to say sometimes they're trying to make the market too big to shut down. So have this, have the name D10 Market in too many people's mouths that there's no way that they could come and take it away from the community. So just having a voice and using it and sharing what you know about programs like this means a whole lot, and can be a very effective tool. We also really rely on our partnerships with other like-minded organizations and other people doing this work. That's why this conference is so important, is to bring us all together, especially in times like these where budgets are getting slashed and resources are feeling more scarce. And we can, look to each other for, I would love to do more like cooperative purchasing among other partners to do things like that, budget advocacy, sharing resources and tools. Since we opened, the first of the free grocery stores in San Francisco, we're constantly doing tours, getting folks in, fielding questions, sharing whatever, lessons we have learned, so that hopefully other folks doing this work, because we can't be the only ones doing this work, will not have to go through the trials and tribulations we did, will not make the mistakes that we made along the way. So we're really trying to share our blueprint with other folks so that this work isn't this hard. It's always going to be hard work, but the more we can do to share the resources and information, the better. So yeah, that's kind of where that leads me at this moment.
That's really powerful. And then Cecilia, what does support and long-term relationship building look like for your farmers? What does advocacy both for them and with them look like?
I think for us, beyond being buyers, we look to ourselves as partners. One of our long-term goals is to get more resources to farmers business-wise, like helping them structure their business, whether that is like workshops or a classroom teaching them about bookkeeping or invoicing. That's one of the things that we have struggled a lot with. A lot of small-scale farmers don't like to do anything with computers. So that's really hard to work with. If they want other buyers besides the food hub, if they want to sell directly to a buyer, it's helpful to have those things in place. So one of our long-term goals is to implement that, especially with the farms that we work with. We have kind of begun to look at ourselves as partners. And another thing with advocacy, I think just continuing to support farmers and making calls to representatives, whether that is walking into the Capitol or like Andy was talking about, just keep putting the pressure on, to hear our voices. Yeah.
That's really powerful, and it's amazing to see a program and people like you who see that collaboration as something important to the success of all, not just, oh, I'm in competition with you. If you get better, then I get worse.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, we're seeing this as a long-term thing more than just like a temporary thing. Oh, just keep the things as they are. We're thinking more like, no, let's improve and let's make this like sustainable and keep it going,
Absolutely. And that leads us perfectly into this next sort of section, thinking about what do we actually imagine for the future beyond this, alongside of this. We've seen parts of a care-based economy with D10, where community goes beyond just the economic value, and with Yeyi, where farmers are centered and helped, as well as in LFPA, where money goes back to communities rather than to companies. But what does it take to get there more broadly? What does it take for San Francisco to get there, to take these lessons learned and apply them? I'm gonna bring in a quote from Wendell Berry because I can't resist, and I've been thinking about this one a lot. We should accept help from the centers of power, wealth, and advice if, by our standards, it is actually helpful. The aim of corporations and their political and academic disciples is large, standardized, industrial solutions applied everywhere. Our aim, to borrow language from John Todd, must be elegant solutions predicated on the uniqueness of each place. Looking around San Francisco, AI billboards will claim that the solutions to every problem are already here and they can be scaled up everywhere. However, what bridging local to national actually means is that each local area has their own solutions, and it must be the responsibility of national and statewide efforts to build that local capacity. Not one size fits all, but shifting the scale of our solutions back to local areas, back to our neighbors, back to folks who care and are invested in our communities. So looking beyond LFPA, beyond this one program, Cecilia, how do you imagine a farming and distribution system that allows you to center the care for and well-being of your farmers, particularly in a system that prioritizes chemical solutions at the cost of farm workers? What do you need for that to happen?
Well,
no big question, you know.
That's a huge question. Sorry, can you repeat the first half?
Yeah. How do you imagine a farming system that helps farmers and doesn't rely on chemicals to make this happen that are often at the cost of farm workers?
Sorry, repeat it again. Sorry, my head.
I guess, what's your dream for a farming system?
I think my dream for a farming system is where farmers are not treated as like the bottom of the food system or the most vulnerable. I think that they need to be respected. They need to get paid what they, what their product is worth. I think that, the farms that we work with, they are all organic. They don't use pesticides, but like my family has worked in farms where chemicals are sprayed on, and not just on the crops, on people that are working in the farms. My parents used to come home smelling like ammonia. If it's on their clothes, it's in their bodies. And then those people consuming that product that was sprayed on, it's just, I just imagine all the horrible things that are going in your body when you're consuming that product. So I think like my dream is that, we don't poison our communities. A lot of our communities also can't afford to buy organic product. I come from Soledad. There is no Trader Joe's there. There is no Whole Foods there. And even now in Whole Foods, right? Some of the product that is sold there, it's like covered with some sort of chemical, even if it's organic, right? So that it doesn't ripen so easily. So I think that supporting the farmers that are using regenerative practices, that are treating the land how it's supposed to be treated, that actually care about what type of food is in your plate, I think that they deserve more respect, and they deserve their fair price. They're not asking for much and they're giving you so much, so yeah.
Thank you, and that's so important. And really, yeah, we're in San Francisco, but all of the food that we ate came from farmers across the US and across the world. And then Maggie, drawing on your experience at D10, as well as prior to that at hunger relief organizations and at farms and farmers markets, what does holistic support look like? What does a care-based assistance system look like? What do you imagine? What's your dream?
Oh, well, my dream would be that folks would not need free grocery stores, right? That the system would work and we wouldn't be in the position that we're in. But until that happens, I wish to see, and I think a lot of others who are working on programs like this wish to see more free grocery stores, right? More access where people get a dignified approach and a dignified environment to get the food that they need. I think something that we're always talking about at the market is that it's more than just a market. We're making connections to other social services and referrals. It's a community space where people want to come and hang out, probably because the food is so good too. And so, we're not just here to fill a gap of food. We're here to try to nourish our community and share the abundance from programs like this. And so, kind of leaning into that more, and that's why this program has been so valuable to our program. And like Cecilia was saying, this allows us, when we're not burdened by the price so much, when the farmers are getting their fair share for the work that they're doing and the bounty we're receiving, we get to see our farmers as partners, as colleagues, as people that we're working alongside and not just trying to extract the most food for the lowest cost from. And I think that aligns with our values a lot. I had the privilege of working for Rodriguez Brothers Ranch in Watsonville, and Roberto, who owns it with his family, was saying, I see my product, the food that I grow, as I see them like you would see livestock. It's like a living creature that I brought into this world, and I want to see it nourish people. And so being able to kind of fulfill that and share it with folks who are usually kind of not included in that system is great. We want to see more programs like this.
I appreciate you all sharing your vision and your dreams for this. Because the reality is, LFPA is only one part of this broader system change. Farmers have to have fair access to land in rural and urban areas. Farmers have to have the ability to purchase, create, and repair supplies, including seeds and machinery, locally. Consumers, that's all of us. We have to know and care where our food comes from and who grows it, at markets, at hospitals, schools, other institutions. Employees at these places, as well as farm workers, have to be paid a living wage, which goes back into the economy, spent with neighbors and in local areas. And while folks are going through a tough time, nourishment has to come from communities, through mutual aid, through giving food and value back to folks. But this, I think, is what it looks like to work towards this system change, while still having programs that help people in the here and now, that purchase from farmers this week, that interact with folks, building relationships that go beyond this one program. Bridging our efforts from local to statewide means that we're not just looking for policy solutions on a long future scale that's going to happen, maybe not in our lifetimes. This is instead helping people right here and right now. So as we look ahead to meaningful system change, this advocacy must happen for these programs as well. So Andy, what's ahead for LFPA, and what do you hope to see beyond this program?
Yes, but first, Rodriguez strawberries?
No, Rodriguez Brothers Ranch, not Rodriguez Brothers Farm.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. There was a schism, though I will.
We'll talk about it later.
All right, cool. Those are my favorite strawberries. Sorry, what am I? Oh, where this is going? Right. Okay, context and hope. I think that's. This is a project of stories. We've fed at this point millions of people. We've touched hundreds of farms, thousands of farm workers. I wish I could know every single story that happened because of this program. One of mine is actually a story you told me, I think it was you, that one of your delivery drivers was delivering into the city and was delivering into a nonprofit who then hired that delivery driver to do some landscaping work.
They started helping them
doing some landscaping work. And it was just something I could never think, just a human touch point of a new relationship built. There must be thousands of those stories in this program. And that's where our power is. And that's what we saw last February. We helped steward thousands of calls to the USDA with people telling exactly that, their individual story, because that swayed the USDA. People listened, that made it up there. And so, long term, this needs politically to live at the USDA. We are working nationally to make that happen. That just has to be the specific real goal, that it sits in the Farm Bill to $1 billion to $200 million every year. And there's a lot of positive momentum and reasons to think that will happen. It's not going to happen now. It's not going to happen this year. It might happen in this administration. I'm not going to lie. Until then, we have a very specific goal right now of continuing the program in California. We have a funding cliff in June. Some of your programs might have already ended. You're till end of May. All of Cecilia's have already ended. By the last week of May, none of these programs are going to be moving. None of that food is going to be reaching families. None of those dollars are going to be going to farms. And so, in lieu of the USDA showing up, we are actively working in this legislative season to bring California to the table to allocate $45 million for the next 3 years, which will hopefully be bridge funding until the USDA comes back. And how to do that is phone calls. So I wrote a prompt for San Francisco residents that I'm going to hand out and put the ask in, because calling your representatives makes a difference. People are asking you to do that all the time, I'm sure. But in doing this policy work for the last couple years, I know 3 phone calls go a really long way. You do not need 3,000 phone calls. So calling your legislative office is what we are asking for right now. It takes 2 minutes of time when I give you a prompt. And what we do with that is we go to Sacramento, we go to those representatives and say, I know so-and-so called you to talk about this program. Let me tell you more about it. Vote yes on it. It's not a bill, that's sort of wonky. But I have a paper. There's more than 30 people. I guess I underestimated how popular this would be. But for San Francisco residents to do some homework and go home and just call the number on the paper and read the script. And then we'll carry that with us into Sacramento, and we have meetings all of April. And the hope is we get that funding. And it hinges on voices, because your voices matter. So if you ask another question, I'll hand them out.
And if you have a phone, you can always take a picture of that as well.
Oh, yes. And if you are not a San Francisco resident, you can come up to me after to get my contact information, because we can get you the same prompt for whichever district you're in. So
this is across California and across the entire nation. If anyone is here out of state, you can find your own administrators. You unfortunately can't call for the California ask.
No.
But turning it back to Cecilia and Maggie, what asks do you have for folks? What are your action items, either for D10 or for Yeyi?
I think for us is, just if you are not supporting your local farmers, you should. I think you should help us advocate for programs like LFPA that, help small-scale farmers, especially those who are that are farming organic produce and that are using regenerative practices. I think that's what I ask.
And a quick plug here. If you're going to be here tomorrow, Cecilia's company, Yeyi, is going to be doing a produce giveaway here. And so you get to try some of this amazing food for yourself. And if you order produce, definitely come talk to Cecilia. Yeyi is interested in providing that. Maggie, how about you?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, funding is something that we are in dire need of. Our client list of 2,000 families and individuals with diet-related illness who shop at the market twice a month is growing. So is the cost of groceries and goods as our funding comes down. So we are looking for other ways to fund our program, looking for a champion. If you know anyone, please spread the word about the D10 market. Also, you can volunteer your time with us. If you want to come in and help stock the shelves, glean through produce, we can always use a hand. If you're not physically able or available to volunteer, there are plenty of discreet ways that you can support our work through some admin tasks. We need a social media. I don't have time to run our Instagram and all these other channels we could have that could be really eye-catching and promote our work. And so I just encourage people, if you don't think you can tap in to support us in a more traditional way, I think, my email was somewhere on a slide before. Shoot me an email. We can see what we can do together. And, continuing to advocate for this programs like this. If you have the privilege to be able to shop farmers markets and shop locally, continue supporting folks like Cecilia and her family. That's my pitch.
Amazing. Anyone have $100 million to fund
Let's
D10?
go.
Always have to ask. You never know in San Francisco.
Right? There could be one in this room. Just step right up. Yeah.
Though I think it is a little self-selecting for the food advocacy action panel. None of us get particularly wealthy. But with that, I would love to open it up to some audience questions. I know you all are probably fired up by this work, probably have so many questions. Let's open it up. Anyone have one right off the bat? Otherwise, I also have a couple, but I feel like I've talked enough already.
There's one that has our website to learn more about the program, but then there's also one that's an email board, and that one, it'll send an email.
Sorry, just a quick question about the script for the calls. Under Senator Wiener, is Senator Laird the champion of this, or is that a typo and we should be asking for Senator Wiener's support?
I've learned. Oh yeah, thank you. So the way the language is Laird's a Senate leader, and so where does it? So we're asking Senator Wiener to basically go to Laird and say, "What up? Fund this." So be like, "Hey, go to leadership and tell him this is important."
Another question in the back. I'm going to get my steps in today. Actually, I'm going to start with the one in the front, and then I'll come over to the back.
Yeah, there we go. It's coming so fast. Oh, I guess I don't need to stand. But hi, my name's Christina with Impact Justice, and we actually have a modern agriculture workforce development training program, training justice-impacted folks in hydroponic farming in Oakland. And I'm curious about, when you're thinking about the future of food, what the landscape for farming looks like, whether it's, we already talked a lot about small-scale farming. Is it going to be micro farming to more community plots, indoor farming like what we're doing actually with correctional facilities here in California and elsewhere? And then what is that job skill transfer pipeline? You were talking about a little bit of the technical resistance with traditional farmers. How can they get upskilled in potential more modern agriculture practices? And conversely, for folks that we're training, how can they get exposure to those traditional agricultural skill sets so that when and if funding resumes and there's openings and things, there's actually a viable pipeline for employment for them? Thank you.
Great collected question. I can start off by answering some of that. I think when we're looking at what does agriculture in the future look like, it's a huge question, but referring back to Wendell Berry's quote, it's unique solutions in each place. And so I think depending on where you are, sometimes like indoor agriculture, sometimes these hydroponics might make the most sense. They might be the most viable, especially in urban environments. But I don't want to say that that's going to be the only future of agriculture. We need small-scale farmers across the US. We need, sometimes larger-scale farmers doing large grain operations, things that feed us on a larger scale. But we also need folks who are working in every single community, in every corner, in every city, doing this work. In terms of job training, that's less so my forte. But I know, Yeyi, you talked a little bit about supporting farmers. I don't know if you have anything else that you'd like to add on that.
Not really. For us, because we are so small, I think we're going to keep it that way for a long time. But as far as the trainings, the invoicing and all that, we were actually planning on growing our company and implementing like classrooms for the farms that we work with, like teaching them Excel, invoicing, QuickBooks. Also teaching them like pitches on how to do a sales pitch, right? How to, run an email, because, I know that it's easy for us, but it's not easy. My parents don't have an email, So stuff like that, yeah.
I'll just add from our work, the term that we want to push people towards is values-based procurement. Shout out Center for Good Food Purchasing, who's all about that. Our vision here is an economic decision-making towards purchasing for good food. And if we can direct federal dollars in this way with the requirements we have to purchase that way, it creates that local impact, individualized impact that Acacia was talking about to make change. A good example of one of our partners in LFPA is Food Shed in San Diego. We purchase from them because we know they have good values. They pay a premium for their farmers who are using climate smart growing practices. So can we, when we have the power in the room, and I know there's food as medicine folks here, I know there's schools, can you, with your purchasing dollars, buy better? Buy in a way that's strategic, and buy in a way that's going to heal communities and heal the environment. So hopefully that would create so many different solutions at a local level, because I think local scales.
Another question somewhere back here.
Hi, my name's Rita. I'm volunteering here and I'm a student at Berkeley, so I'm just here to explore what kind of ways there are to get involved in food systems. And I guess my question is, have you guys ever seen policy or advocacy efforts become ineffective? And if so, what makes the difference between successful initiatives and those that tend to fall flat?
The wearied sigh.
I don't know if this is an answer, but this is a vision I have, which is, I've seen a lot of the way funding works, policy works, is grant making. And grants, the way they're written, are incentivizing you to write pie in the sky solutions. That I've written a lot of grants. I stretch what's possible to be competitive. And I write it in a way that every time it's sort of pushing me to start from scratch, do something new. What I love about LFPA is I'm just buying food with it. I'm just purchasing in the regular market, and our farmers are growing because of it. So everyone here is saying, like, don't create new solutions because they exist. And I think policy can fail when you look beyond what you have right here. And I think we could move away from like grant making towards values-based procurement across any industry. Like, buy good textiles, and that will help the textile industry. But yeah, I'm newer to policy, so I don't have any complete failures except everything that's happening in the world. But
I will say the USDA Farmers to Families Food Box Program, which is what the LFPA program originally was built out of, underwent some shifts towards corporate America. You want to talk about that one?
yeah, so I mean, that was COVID era, so props for the USDA for getting something out. But over the course of its 8 months of existence, they changed the rules in a way that took out restrictions that allowed bad practices to come in. So then it all just went to like dairy, and you were hearing stories of just tractor trailers of spoiled milk left on the side of the road. And I was just like, I'm just trying to buy some kale, and they stopped letting us buy kale.
Yeah. So with that, oftentimes when corporate interests get involved in the policy making, that's when we see a lot of the policies actually failing to support local solutions. Other questions? Got one in the front.
Hi, my name's Sophie. I guess my question is around value-based food purchasing, because that term could mean a lot of things. So, like, who determines those values for LFPA? How is that being determined right now in terms of where that money's going?
This is your time to shine.
We set pretty low. We set a barrier of entry that we thought would create the best partners, and so we did it by sales. So we didn't allow any business in that we're mostly working with food hubs. So any business that's making more than 10 million in sales a year, we didn't let in. Then we had incentive structures to requirements to prioritize purchasing from farms of under $1 million and purchasing from socially disadvantaged. We thought that was the simplest container we could do, and then each of these groups then carried on and made their purchasing decisions from our container. So Cecilia only bought organic. You know, others did climate smart. Others did purchase from cooperatively owned. So we tried to set what we could like to restrict, but then allowed the individualization. And then D10, you all do your purchasing from Fruit Queen. You order, right, specifically, or does Fruit Queen, like, you inform the purchasing specifically? You're looking for these products.
We have, you know, a great partnership with Fruit Queen. They're very receptive to what we have to say, and then we're also very receptive to the fact that we're working with small local farms that need to work seasonally. So we have sent them, when we first started this partnership, which was like 2 years ago, sent them kind of a wish list. These are the things that our clients are asking for. And a lot of them weren't feasible, like tomatoes in December or, you know, watermelons in February, those kinds of things. And so what we've done is really, you know, see them as partners in sourcing, and they know what our clients want, again, from the surveys and the information that we shared with them, and they're able to say, okay, what do the farmers have available that also lines up with the needs of the population? Every now and then they'll throw something new in there, just because who doesn't want to try a new food? And then we get to, you know, share information about how you eat, a chirimoya, for example, with our clients. So it's really kind of a fusion of this is what we want, and also this is what's available this week, and this is, you know, what the farmers need.
More questions going over here. Just for the interpreter.
Okay. Hello. So we've talked a little bit about like local farms, supporting local farms, and I've heard, you know, for a long time now, different mileages, like 250 miles, I think I heard today. So places that we talk about that are marginalized, I'm just going to use like East Palo Alto, for example, that don't have access to supermarkets and things like that, and the infrastructure is not there. So as small farmers, when trying to shop for somebody that's local, like within 250 miles, like say Half Moon Bay or something like that, is the infrastructure there to deliver to somewhere like East Palo Alto, or what would it take to get like a small farmer to deliver to an area that isn't being delivered to already, if that makes sense? Like, what's the criteria, I guess, or what would be the criteria?
Let me just understand the question. So you're asking if somebody wanted to buy from an area like East Palo Alto, from a small scale farm, like what would it take? For us, it's the distance for sure. So like we are in Hollister and we deliver all across the Bay Area. We're capable of delivering all the way to King City, from King City all the way to probably Napa, and then the East Bay. Because we are so small, that's our radius. Anything further than that would require like a larger order. But anywhere in between that radius, I think our minimum order is like $1,000 or something like that. Yeah.
I'll also just, I've thrown around the word food hub. A lot of our investment is into the middle of the supply chain. Yeyi Organics is a food hub. So individual farms might not have the time or the trucks to deliver. So when you can purchase at scale or purchasing at volume, if you go through a food hub, they spread the impact to a network of farms, and then they handle logistics. So through our network, we can hit every county, every part of every county around the state with farms from nearby.
Yeah, just to illustrate that a little more, when we first opened the D10 Community Market, we were buying directly from Rodriguez Brothers Ranch because I had the connection and we knew that they had extra product. But after a couple months, they were like, hey, the drive from Watsonville just isn't working for us. We didn't have a vehicle for the market, so we couldn't go down and get it. And they said, well, we could come and deliver on weekends when we're doing farmers markets up in the city, but we're not open on weekends. And so that's why this program, the LFPA program, was such a godsend, because it made it possible for folks to, nobody's being put out by the transportation of that. That's being handled by a third party, which for us has made it possible to, again, have that farm direct, fresh organic produce. That was logistically really difficult beforehand.
All right, and we have time for maybe one more question. I see a hand over here, so I'll work my way across. But if you get a bunch of food hub people together, they'll all want to talk about cross-docking and logistics of transportation. So great question.
First of all, great job, panel and facilitator. In answer to your question about food policy failures specifically, many of the Bay Area food system alliances and food policy councils were established with public health department seed money at the city or county level, mostly county level. Only really 2 or 3 of them are still very active, and they've been incredibly successful. The Santa Clara and San Mateo food systems alliances particular. Oakland Food Policy Council had a tremendous amount of impacts early on. You can Google publications like Cultivating Resistance. So beyond that, though, keep in mind, because that public health money was seed money, some of those food policy councils and food system alliances weren't able to continue in the long run. In terms of agency outreach was sometimes weak and not always successful in supporting those FSAs and FPCs. Government programs tend to be more unionized, so I want to ask folks to start to think about how government can also really bring all this together as well. The nonprofit sector tends to have lower benefit rates, so many of the conservatives see these efforts as they should be in nonprofits, not in government agencies. So there's a little bit of a shtick there. I want to also give an example around farm worker housing in Alameda County. There's been efforts by the Agricultural Advisory Committee to promote farm worker housing as a greater allowability zoning-wise on the farm acreage in eastern Alameda County. Problem is, many of those acreages are all required to be 100 or 300 acres zoned wise, and there's a narrowness of a definition of how agriculture is defined. Where I come from in the East Coast, it includes landscaping and arboriculture. Many of these efforts are limited by the Save Open Space 2000 scenic viewshed amendment ordinance that was passed by Alameda County's Board of Supervisors. These limited development, which was overall a good thing, but more towards scenic viewshed and viewability and the wine grape agritourism industry, not so much supporting small farms. As a result, many or most of the small farms left Alameda County. As a result, you cannot have a kitchen on a winery, an at-scale, commercial-scale kitchen on a winery in Alameda County. So that was a limitation. I want everybody to take a look at the efforts of San Diego's, I think it's correct me if I'm wrong, is it FSA or FPC? I don't remember. The Los Angeles Food Policy Council is quite active as well. Sacramento Food Policy Council has also had a lot of successes. Please look up the Santa Clara Food Systems Work Plan. It was actually codified by the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors as a work plan. And keep in mind, globally, folks, we're now at a point of 0.1% of fresh water remaining on planet Earth, 60% of the world's food population now living in cities, and 70% of most counties, at least in California, have a carbon footprint of 70%. Very massive concern. So that's my wrap up. Sorry that was so long, but these are all closed systems. If we don't fix the air, water, and soil quality problem, we're all not able to hydrate, grow, and breathe. So that said, think about rooftop growing as a way to sequester carbon and sequester water. Thanks so much.
I don't think there was a question in there, but some great points. And to turn finally back to our panel, just to wrap it up, I want to ask one last question for folks of what's been bringing you joy? I know right now it seems like a tough and overwhelming time, but what's something small or large that's been giving you joy lately?
Watching people get excited about food makes me really happy. Like seeing, we have kids at the market all the time shopping with their parents, and seeing them grab a piece of fruit and run up to their parent all excited because they want it and they get to take it home. That gets me really excited. And programs like this are staff and team and volunteers and everybody is, so devastated about the potential of losing this program. And what I've been trying to do is, instead of being miserable it's going away, let's try to enjoy this while we have it, and work as hard as we can to advocate for it. But we don't want to lose the joy of having it while we do. And so enjoying this high value product and being able to share it with the community, hoping it will return, but really just like rejoicing about it for a minute and being grateful for it, and hoping that we get to continue this work.
For me, to be honest, sorry. For me, to be honest, what brings me joy these days is my son. But on top of that is seeing kids eat healthy food. I observe a lot when I take my kid to the playground and I see the food that kids are eating. And I just hope that the fruit that they are ingesting is organic for their development. I always think of that. Like, I hope those kids are eating organic food. And sometimes, I see other kids eating, processed food. It breaks my heart. I really get happy when I see kids eating healthy food. Yeah.
Just the springtime, probably. I mean, it's March, I think, is the prettiest time of the year in the Bay, and this one is quite spectacular, I think, in particular. So just the smell of jasmine everywhere you're going is just sort of lifts me up, and I do take inspiration from nature into my work, and springtime to me is one of the most inspiring seasons, with new growth and knowing all of our farms are probably at their prettiest right now as well. So being sure to just be outside. Are you going to answer too, Acacia?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think springtime, for me, I think the fresh, looking forward to the start of strawberries here is definitely something that I'm really, really excited for. I've already had a couple. Fruit Queen sources amazing Ichigo farm strawberries, which are so, so spectacular. And if you see them, they're usually sold in an Asian grocery store specifically. So those are some of my favorite early season strawberries. And with that, I just want to have a huge round of applause for all of our amazing panelists. Thank you so much. You all answered pretty much the question of what is your dream for the food system, and I really, really appreciate that. All right, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon. I believe the next thing is upstairs in the large main thing. Break until 3:10 or 3:15, when it will be upstairs afterwards. Thank you so much, all.
We did it. Good job. Thank you